Chapter 476. Whoosh! Violent spatial turbulence continued to engulf the area of effect of the fairy sphere. Rumble! In the dark world where even space was annihilated, waves of destructive waves rolled back and forth, attacking in all directions. Kacha! Kacha kacha! The fairy sphere, which was known as an absolute defense spell, was swept away by the spatial turbulence. Along with the sound of cracking, cracks began to appear on the surface of the fairy sphere. In such a situation, a human and two gods began to fight with their lives on the line. Aha! Noah frantically poured the magic in his body into the fairy sphere, maintaining the existence of the fairy sphere, so that the spatial turbulence would not affect him. Oh! Mecher, who had transformed into a bolt of lightning, kept rushing out. Against the spatial turbulence that could kill an ordinary person, he let out a furious roar. Ah! Even Welslana, who had turned into a gust of wind, seemed to have begun to fight with his life on the line. He carried an extremely terrifying curse power, attacking the surrounding spatial turbulence and attacking outside. In a sense, this human and two gods were challenging their own limits, just to survive in this chaotic battle. Seeing Welslana, who had transformed into a gust of wind, and Mecher, who had transformed into a bolt of lightning, unwaveringly attacking this side under the sweeping of the spatial turbulence, Noah's eyes also showed a look of madness. Soon, they would be able to break free from the sweeping of the spatial turbulence and break through the fairy sphere that was riddled with holes in one breath. They would be out of danger, and a look of madness appeared in Noah's eyes. Although directly shattering the space and exiling Welslana and Mecher into the spatial turbulence, as long as the plan went smoothly, it should be able to bury any opponent. But if the opponent was a god, Noah had not thought of the possibility of failure. In order to deal with this, Noah had previously prepared another method, which was to let Bo deal with Mecher, while he himself faced Welslana. At that moment, Noah fiercely raised the knight's sword in his other hand, and with a stab, the knight's sword pierced through one of the cracks in the fairy sphere. Bang! In the next moment, the surging flames on the knight's sword soared. Release for me! Noah's low voice resounded through the sky. Black Tea King. As soon as the voice fell, the pitch-black knight's sword suddenly turned golden, and even the flames on the sword turned into golden flames, crazily rising. What? Seeing this scene, Welslana, who had turned into a gust of wind, was shocked. Could that be? As the god of victory, Welslana had 10 incarnations. Strong wind bull, white horse camel, mountain boar boy, phoenix, herding sheep, goat, and finally, human warrior with a golden sword. There were a total of 10 incarnations, and each incarnation had a different power. After learning from Liliana what kind of power Welslana's 10 incarnations had, Noah planned to use the Black Tea King to steal the power of one of the incarnations. The most powerful of Welslana's 10 incarnations was the white horse. In mythology and ancient times, the existence of the horse had a close relationship with the sun from the beginning. In almost all myths, the sun god who represented the sun sat in a carriage, carried by horses, and traveled from east to west. This was commonly passed down in many civilizations: East, India, Northern Europe, China, Babylon. Without exception, even the Greek Apollo was like this. Just like Apollo, in Persian mythology, the god of light Mitra, who represented the light, also praised the same myth. Welslana was the undefeated military god who served Mitra, the incarnation of the sun. Therefore, Welslana, who served Mitra, could transform into a white horse, carry the sun, and drive the flames from the sun. While dealing with Welslana, Noah took advantage of Welslana's carelessness and used the Black Tea King to steal Welslana's incarnation of the white horse. Now, it was time to release the incarnation of the white horse. Burn it all up for me, gods! When Noah burst out such a roar, the expanding golden flames burning on the knight's sword suddenly stagnated, and then suddenly burst out. Nay! A horse's cry echoed in the dark space turbulence. The flames from the sun turned into a majestic white horse, shining with golden light. Amidst the horse's neigh, it carried the overwhelming golden flames, and fell like a meteor from the sky, rubbing against the spatial turbulence that swept up, and abruptly landing on the gale and lightning that were charging outwards. Bang! The surging flames of the sun burst out like an explosion, covering every corner of the space turbulence with a sea of golden flames. The scorching heat caused the space turbulence to become even more violent, and rushed in all directions of the pitch-black world. The wind that was directly covered by the sun's flames returned to the form when Welslana used the incarnation of the youth, and Mekl, who turned into lightning, also returned to the tall giant form in the flames. Under the burning of the flames, both of them let out painful screams. If they were in their peak state, then it would not be difficult for Welslana and Mekl to block the power of the incarnation of Welslana. However, under the sweeping of the space turbulence, Welslana and Mekl could not protect themselves, and in order to rush out of the space turbulence, they used a lot of curse power, and did not have any power left to block the power of the white horse. Under the burning of the fire from the sun, Welslana and Mekl's bodies melted like candles. Under such circumstances, the two gods of the highest level actually laughed, and they laughed with extreme pleasure. Have you let my incarnation fail? Welslana no longer made any resistance, and let his body gradually collapse under the sweeping of the sun's flames and space turbulence. His eyes shot straight to Noah, who was outside the huge sphere, and he laughed heartily. How amazing! Warrior! I admit that this is my failure, but there will not be a next time. Mekl's deafening thunder sounded. King of the God Slayer, you have defeated the King of the Gods, Mekl. Be proud of it. Then, become stronger. Welslana reached out to Noah, his eyes full of undying fighting spirit. Let my power become thy food, until I appear in front of thee again. Have the power to obtain victory in any battle. Leaving these words, Welslana and Mekl's figures were buried by the golden flames and dark turbulence, and they disappeared. At the same time, Noah felt two huge forces suddenly flowed into his body, mixed with the almost exhausted magic power in his body, and violently tumbled. The two huge forces that appeared out of nowhere were like overbearing invaders. Not only did they occupy Noah's body, but they also provoked the little remaining magic power in Noah, and caused a conflict. Under such a conflict, Noah's knight's sword and revolver, the two weapons in his soul, suddenly disappeared from Noah's body, turned into pure power, and mixed with all the forces in his body, stirring up all the forces in his body. In the end, even Bio, who had returned to Noah's body, turned into pure power and joined the chaotic battle. In other words, all the forces in Noah's body were in conflict, and some kind of change occurred. In the next moment, an unimaginable pain attacked Noah's body. Noah did not even have time to cry out in pain. His consciousness shook under the impact of the unimaginable pain, and began to dissipate, because the revolver also turned into pure power and joined Noah's body in the chaotic battle. The death feather form of magician behind Noah naturally disappeared, and let the suspended Noah fall to the sea. The moment before he completely lost consciousness, Noah felt it. Two soft and delicate bodies wrapped around him. Chapter 477. In a daze, Noah felt that there was a slender palm stroking back and forth on his body, as if it was very curious about his body. This feeling did not bring any unpleasantness to Noah, because the palm was very slender, and the touch was very good, so no one would doubt that the owner of the palm was a man. In other words, the palm that was curiously stroking back and forth on Noah's body was a woman's hand. Under this feeling, Noah's consciousness gradually recovered, and he opened his eyes. Oh, you're awake. This was a very light, crisp and sweet voice. The moment the voice sounded, Noah also opened his eyes, and then, a delicate girl's pretty face was imprinted into Noah's eyes. Good morning. The human world seems to use this way to greet people who have just woken up. The girl said with a sweet smile. So child, I can also greet you like this, right? Noah finally reacted when he heard this. His eyes widened as he looked at the pretty face that was just inches away from him. Immediately, he abruptly leaped up and distanced himself from the young lady. Only then did Noah realize that he was in a space that he didn't know where it was. There was nothing around. Everything in sight was gray. Even to the end of the horizon, except for gray, there was nothing else. The only exception was Noah himself, and the girl who just knelt beside Noah lying on the ground. Judging from her appearance, she was at most a 14 or 15-year-old girl. The girl had an extremely upright and cute appearance. Her figure was extremely slender, and she looked very young and tender. However, she had a very seductive temperament that made people feel that she had a seductive temperament. Unconsciously, they were immersed in this feeling. Therefore, rather than using the word beautiful to describe this girl, it was better to say that she had a young face and body, long golden hair, and wearing a thin white dress. The girl was really quite cute. Noah had never seen this girl before. Therefore, Noah was sure that he did not know this person at all. Why did he appear here? Who was this girl? One question after another made Noah speak hesitantly. You are Pandora. The girl replied in a cute tone that could have been added to the end of the sentence. The goddess who gives all disasters and a glimmer of hope. That's me, Pandora. Noah was stunned. He pointed at the girl who called herself Pandora with a dumbfounded expression. Are you Pandora? It was impossible for Noah not to have heard of the name Pandora. It would not be an exaggeration to use the word most famous to describe the goddess. However, undoubtedly, this goddess was the most charming and beautiful in the myths. Although this young lady who called herself Pandora also had an indescribable charm, her figure and appearance didn't seem like the goddess of calamity at all. Pandora suddenly blinked and stared at Noah. I feel like you're thinking about something very rude. Noah was shocked and quickly laughed dryly. No, how could it be? What a naughty child. Pandora puffed up her cheeks. She looked so cute that it completely destroyed the image of the goddess Pandora in Noah's heart. You can't be so rude to your mother. Mother? Noah's mouth twitched. Pandora was the third person who claimed to be Noah's mother. The first two, Gaia and Aleia, looked like they were only 10 years old. Not to mention being a mother, they might even be suitable to be Noah's daughter. Now this person in front of him, who looked younger than him, claimed to be his mother? At this moment, Noah cursed his birth from the bottom of his heart. I feel like you're thinking about something rude again. Pandora angrily stared at Noah. I'm the goddess who manages the reincarnation ceremony of the God Slayer. Since you've reincarnated as a God Slayer, you're my child, and I'm your mother. Is there anything wrong with that? God Slayer? Noah was shocked. He finally remembered everything that happened before he fainted. Yes, I killed whales Lana and Mekl. I saw that battle too. It was very exciting. Pandora's anger turned into joy. She was like a child. She got angry quickly, but her anger disappeared quickly. Among all my children, you performed the best in the battle of reincarnating as a God Slayer. Even I didn't think that you would actually shatter the space and banish the invincible god of war and the god king into the space turbulence. Finally, you gave them a fatal blow and killed two gods at the same time. This has never happened before. It made me want to get out of here and give you a big hug as a reward. With that, Pandora got up, rushed forward, and hugged Noah, who was stunned there. You're Noah, right? You did very well. Noah awkwardly hugged Pandora, who couldn't even touch the ground after hugging his neck because of her height. After a while he sighed. In other words, I've really become a God Slayer? Of course it's true. Pandora raised her head from Noah's arms and suddenly smiled. With the reincarnation spell left behind by Epimetheus and myself, and with the gods as the sacrifice, I have indeed transferred the power of the Welslana war god and the god King Mekr to you through a secret ritual, making you the new God Slayer. After saying that, Pandora narrowed her eyes, and her expression became a little flirtatious. Faintly, whether it was her eyes or her expression, there was an extremely strong curiosity. However, your physique seems to be a little special. Hearing this, Noah was stunned. Do you know? Pandora let go of her arms around Noah's neck and landed on the ground. She raised her head and looked at Noah with an extremely strong curiosity in her eyes. Under normal circumstances, using the secret ritual of reincarnation and using the killed gods as sacrifices, the God Slayer can only obtain one god's authority. However, When the secret ritual transferred the power of whales Lana and Mekhl into your body actually absorbed all the power of the two gods and mixed it with your own power, resulting in a great change. Noah was stunned at first, and then he was speechless. If such a thing really happened, then it was indeed Noah's physique that caused trouble. Although Noah was a human, he had the three physiques that even gods could not have. One of the three physiques was that he could absorb all the external power that entered his body for his own use, strengthening himself and increasing Noah's power. It was because of this physique that Noah could absorb all the power of whales Lana and Mekhl for himself. However, what was that great change about? Could it be that it was the same as when he implanted the daybreak star pattern in the world of the absolute dual blades? The power that entered his body and his physique had a strange conflict, causing his own power to change? To be able to kill two gods at the same time, even if it is inconceivable, it is not absolutely impossible. However, to be able to absorb all the power of the reincarnated gods through the secret ritual is something that I have never encountered before. Pandora moved her head closer to Noah's face. Are you hiding something? You can't lie to your mother. Looking at Pandora's extremely curious expression, as if she wanted to dissect him, Noah could only turn his head away and avoid her gaze. You are such a naughty child. Pandora's cheeks puffed up, but after a while, it returned to a cute smile. Forget it. Although I don't know what kind of changes the power of the god of war and Mekhl have caused in your body, it must be good for you, right? Hearing this, Noah was about to nod, but his head suddenly felt dizzy, and his vision blurred. Looks like it's time, Pandora said with a smile. Originally, you should have forgotten everything that happened here when you returned to your original world, but I don't know why this world actually accepted your existence. After you return, you shouldn't forget anything, so don't forget your mother. As soon as her voice fell, Noah's vision turned black, and he lost consciousness. Chapter 478. When Noah woke up again, a slightly familiar ceiling appeared in front of him. After sitting up, Noah found that he was lying on a bed and surrounded by the layout of a rather familiar room. If he remembered correctly, this room should be Noah's hotel room in Sardinia. Recalling the feeling of being hugged by two soft and delicate bodies before he fainted, Noah's expression slowly relaxed. Erica and Liliana? Other than Erica and Liliana, it should be impossible for anyone else to save Noah. This made Noah feel some gratitude toward Erica and Liliana. After all, if Electra and Liliana hadn't saved Noah, he would have either fallen into the sea and drowned, or he would have been swept into the spatial turbulence that broke through the fairy sphere and died without a doubt. Thinking of all the arrangements and plans he had made for that battle, but almost died in the end, Noah could not help but sigh. Sure enough, killing a god is not something humans can do. With that said, Noah clearly felt that his body seemed to be different from before. Pandora said that when the power of whales Lana and Mekhl entered Noah's body, the power in Noah's body seemed to have undergone a great change. Thinking of this, Noah frowned, closed his eyes, and sank his consciousness into his body. Then, Noah discovered the changes in his body. First of all, Noah's bones now became harder than iron, perhaps harder than any alloy in the world. Secondly, rather than saying that the muscle fibers in Noah's body had hardened, it was better to say that they had become more difficult to tear. Coupled with the physique of a god slayer that he had learned from others, Noah had no doubt that once he entered a combat state, his body would instantly burst forth with a more powerful ability than adrenaline, allowing his body to enter the most perfect combat state and exert his greatest strength. Of course, the most significant change in Noah's body was that from today onwards, except for spells that were effective against gods, all other magic and magic would be completely ineffective against him, whether it was beneficial or not. This was a physical change. Furthermore, Noah felt that his strength had also undergone a significant change. The most intuitive manifestation was that Noah's originally extremely huge magic power had increased exponentially, at least 3 times. As for the others, such as the 2 weapons lodging in Noah's soul, some of the power that Noah could have used, and even the golden wolf Bio, all disappeared. No, it did not disappear. Instead, it completely fused with a power sleeping in Noah's body. It was a power called authority. The power in Noah's body that originally belonged to Welslana, Mekhl, and a part of his own power, had all fused together, forming an authority. Like Welslana, it could change into 10 avatars of authority. However, due to the fusion of Mekhl and Noah's own power, these 10 avatars had also changed. Sensing this change, Noah sent his consciousness, which had sunk into his body deeper. Immediately, he saw an ancient stone plate. Around the stone plate, there were 10 patterns connected. That was the new authority that was born after the fusion of Noah, Welslana, and Mekhl's power. Sinking his consciousness into the stone plate, a large amount of memories poured into Noah's mind, allowing Noah to instantly obtain the information of the 10 avatars. Storm, an avatar formed by the fusion of Welslana's strong wind avatar and Mekhl's storm. It could cause a strong storm, and to a certain extent, it could dominate the sky and summon a storm. Giant, an avatar formed by the fusion of Welslana's bull avatar and Mekhl's appearance. When using this avatar, one could obtain a strange power that far exceeded the limits, and its power was enough to split mountains and rivers. White horse, an avatar from Welslana, able to summon the white horse that carried the sun and exorcise the flames from the sun. Dragon man, an avatar formed by the fusion of Welslana's camel avatar and Mekhl's dragon slayer avatar. When using this avatar, not only could one obtain a close combat ability that surpassed wild instincts and intuition, but could also transform one's body into a dragon's physique, obtaining a body that was comparable to a giant dragon's. To a certain extent, it could restrain dragon-type creatures and cause great damage to dragon-type creatures. Golden wolf, an avatar formed by the fusion of Welslana's mountain boar avatar and the crush magic. It could summon the Golden Wolf Bio. Under this avatar, the Golden Wolf Bio not only had his own original transformation ability, but also had the powerful charging ability of the Mountain Boar avatar. It could create a shockwave that could crush everything. When using this avatar, the user could also obtain the ability to crush everything. Priest, an avatar formed by the fusion of Welslana's youth avatar and Noah's rune magic. When using this avatar, one could obtain the ability to protect and dominate, shelter, and make humans obey. Only when using this avatar, the user could use the rune magic. Combined with the authority itself, not only did the rune magic increase the power of the rune magic, but it also became independent. It no longer needed to be in contact with the magic base to use magic of the authority level. Phoenix, an authority that came from Welslana, able to obtain speed that surpassed everything. Elf, an avatar formed by the fusion of Welslana's shepherd avatar and Noah's regenerative ability strengthened by the protozoan virus. No matter how serious the injury was, as long as it caused damage to the body, it could be expelled in a very short period of time, allowing the user to recover to their original state. Thunder, an avatar formed by combining Welslana's goat avatar and Mekhl's lightning authority. It could summon thunderclouds that formed lightning, and it could also turn the user into lightning, gaining the ability to control lightning. Warrior, an avatar from Welslana, a fusion of Noah's night sword and revolver. When the avatar has sufficient knowledge of the opponent, the avatar can weave spirits and form a golden sword to attack. If the avatar is used as an opponent, the avatar must have sufficient knowledge of the god's own divinity. If the avatar is used as an opponent, the avatar must have sufficient knowledge of the god's own divinity. If the avatar is used as an opponent, the avatar must have sufficient knowledge of the god's own divinity. If the avatar is used as an opponent, the avatar must have sufficient knowledge of the god's own divinity. If the avatar is used as an opponent, the avatar must have sufficient knowledge of the god's own divinity. If the avatar is used as an opponent, the avatar must have sufficient knowledge of the god's own divinity. If the avatar is used as an opponent, the avatar must have sufficient knowledge of the god's own divinity. If the avatar is used as an opponent, the avatar must have sufficient knowledge of the god's own divinity. In addition, Mekhl seemed to have other powers, But those powers were too complex, so they were all directly turned into pure curse power, which was used to enhance Noah's magic. To put it bluntly, Noah's current magic curse power was definitely stronger than other god slayers, and a lot stronger. As for the 10 avatars' powers, although strictly speaking, it could only be regarded as one power, it could be used as 10 powers. Originally, this kind of power that could use multiple powers must have very strict restrictions, but these restrictions seem to have been eliminated because Noah had absorbed all the powers of Welslana and Mekhl, including the ability to limit. It had been completely integrated into Noah's power. When Noah did not use his power, he could enter a state of self-enhancement. Simply put, Noah's power had been redistributed. Now, without using power, Noah could only use magic bullet, strengthening magic, and the 3 major spells. The rest could only be used after using the corresponding power. For example, crush. Even if Noah still knew how to use it, there was no way to use it without using the avatar of the golden wolf. Because it had already broken away from the category of magic, it had become an ability of power. All these changes made Noah's frown deeper and deeper. Overall, my strength must have increased greatly, but there are pros and cons. It seems that I have to use some time to explore new powers. Chapter 479. After fully understanding the changes in all aspects of his body, Noah opened his eyes, looked at his hands, and smiled bitterly. Although it's not the first time, my physique is really cheating. Pandora said that generally, when a god slayer worked hard to kill a god, they could only get one authority. Noah killed Welslana and Mekhl at the same time. Logically speaking, he should have been able to get 2 authorities. But because of the inexplicable changes in his physique and strength, and the power of God that flowed into his body, Noah finally only got 1 authority. Storm, Giant, White Horse, Draconian, Golden Wolf, Priest, Phoenix, Elf, Thunder, and Warrior. What Noah got was the authority to use these 10 avatars. The authority that could use multiple powers generally had strict restrictions. For example, an avatar could only be used once, and after using it, it had to wait for a period of time before it could be used again. It was even possible that there was a limit to how long the avatar could be used. However, because of his physique, Noah absorbed all the power of Welslana and Mekhl, and merged it with his own power, eliminating all these restrictions. If one thought about it carefully, this was not strange at all. After all, Welslana also had the authority to use 10 avatars, and Noah himself did not have these restrictions. If Noah was just an ordinary god slayer, then usurping the power of God would inevitably cause these powers to have restrictions. But Noah's physique tyrannically absorbed these powers and turned the power of God into his own power. Naturally, there would not be any strange restrictions. Therefore, although it was still authority, the authority of the 10 avatars that were born from the combination of Noah, Welslana, and Mekhl's power was no longer the power of God, but Noah's own power. Without those restrictions, the authority of these 10 avatars could be used as 10 authority. No wonder Noah said that this was cheating. However, no matter what, it was a fact that his own power had increased exponentially to a different dimension, and Noah could not be satisfied with this. Noah closed his eyes again, and the outline of the stone plate that connected the 10 avatars appeared in his mind. He clearly understood how strong these 10 avatars were, and his heart was excited. With my current power, if I face Hades again, I will definitely not lose. And Noah opened his eyes and raised his hand. A wave of magic lines immediately fluctuated and covered Noah's arm. Even if it's not fused with authority like the Rini magic, my magic bullet and enhanced magic don't have to come into contact with the magic base plate anymore. I can use them completely on my own. This was an extremely good thing. As mentioned before, the power of magic depended on the power in the source. It was a power that had been determined from the beginning. The amount of this power that a magician could use had long been determined. In other words, no matter how much one honed their magic, as long as they reached the limit of the power that had been determined in the source, Then no matter how hard the magician tried, there was no way to improve the power of magic. Now Noah's magic was completely independent. Like the power of Wells Lana and Meckel that flowed into Noah's body, it had become Noah's own power. It no longer had to be in contact with the magic base, nor was it a power that came from the source. Noah could rely on his own practice to improve the power of his magic, just like the crush magic that he had mastered. And with Noah's magic power that had become even more cheating after becoming a god slayer, why would he worry about the power of his magic not increasing? In addition to magic in magic, my authority is the embodiment of my true power. I must familiarize myself with authority during this period of time. Just after Noah figured out the various changes in himself and the path he should take in the future, the door of Noah's room was opened. Immediately afterward, Erica, who was wearing a black and red princess dress, and Liliana, who was still wearing blue and black casual clothes, came in from the outside. Perhaps they didn't expect Noah to have woken up. When they saw Noah sitting on the bed, Erica and Liliana were startled at first, then they were surprised at the same time. "You're awake." "I just woke up." Noah also reacted and nodded to Erica and Liliana. "It was you who saved me, right?" "Thank you." Electra and Liliana nodded subconsciously. In the next second, the two girls finally remembered. The man in front of them was no longer just a powerhouse who could block the King of Swords of Italy, but a real god slayer. The seventh god slayer in the world had been born, and he was right in front of Erica and Liliana. At that moment, Liliana, who was the first to realize this, suddenly knelt on one knee on the ground, put her right hand on her left chest, and performed the highest knight's salute to Noah. "Please allow Liliana Kranikar to greet you, Your Majesty." As she said that, Liliana glanced at Erica, who was still standing there without any intention of saluting, and frowned slightly. "Erica, don't tell me you're still as willful and reckless as before when you meet the king." "How strict?" "No matter what, I won't go to that extent. Besides, I'm not being willful and reckless. Knowing how to pay attention to beauty is what a noble lady should have, Lily." Erica shook her head with a wry smile, but still like Liliana, she knelt on one knee and performed the knight's salute. "Erica Brantery is also here to offer you the highest salute and congratulations, the seventh king." Seeing that even Erica, who was extremely confident in herself and overly concerned about beauty, knelt and saluted him, Noah opened his mouth slightly. But after a moment of hesitation, he finally chose to accept Erica's and Liliana's submission. Erica and Liliana, who thought that Noah would object to their excessive salute, because he was not used to it, were surprised at first. Then they developed a faint admiration for Noah. Why did the relevant people in the magic world treat the god slayers as kings and serve them? It was not only because the god slayers had the power that humans could not resist, but also because the god slayers were the only existences that could fight against the god of disobedience, who was wreaking havoc all over the world. This was because the god slayer represented the human race in challenging the god of disobedience, and was able to protect the human race from the hands of the god of disobedience. Therefore, the human race would respect the god slayer as their king, and also serve the god slayer voluntarily. As a newly born king, he would subconsciously resist being saluted as a subject, but Noah did not resist. Instead, he accepted it. It was not because Noah really regarded himself as the king of all humans after becoming a god slayer, but because Noah clearly knew that this identity not only represented status, but also responsibility. Therefore, Noah did not refuse Erica's and Liliana's salute as a subject, which was a tacit admission that he would bear the responsibility of fighting the god of disobedience and protecting humans from the god of disobedience. Seeing this clearly, Erica and Liliana admired Noah. "How long have I been unconscious?" Noah asked. "You should be the ones who brought me back, right?" "Yes, Your Majesty," Liliana replied respectfully. "You have been unconscious for 3 whole days." "Has it been 3 days?" Noah rubbed his eyebrows and sighed. "I'm sorry for letting you take care of me for so long. No, this is the duty of a knight." Although Erica saluted as a subject, the smile on her face was still as fierce as a female lion's. Of course, We've also reported the entire process of our king's battle against the undefeated war god and the god of the Mediterranean Sea to the magic society we belong to. Salba Leiching has already received the news and specially instructed us to contact him immediately after you wake up. That idiot. Noah sighed again. Knowing that I succeeded in killing the god, that battle maniac should be unable to hold back anymore, right? With such a sentence, the corners of Noah's mouth gradually curled up. Well, it's time to get back the capital and interest. Chapter 480. Yo, Noah. I've heard about it. I didn't expect you to fight two of the highest level gods before you even became one of my kind. You're so lucky. On the other side of the phone, Tony's frivolous and somewhat excited voice reverberated loudly in Noah's ears, causing Noah to involuntarily move the phone a certain distance away. Noah narrowed his eyes and said to Tony on the other end of the phone in an extremely annoyed tone. Under normal circumstances, this kind of situation should be said to be bad luck, right? You're at it again. Why are you being so polite? Tony seemed to be a little excited. To be able to fight two of the highest level gods at once, that kind of thing is something that can't be asked for. If it were me, I would be so excited that I wouldn't be able to sleep for 3 days and 3 nights. You said it was you. Sorry, I'm definitely not the same as you in this regard. Noah retorted without holding back. Also, if this kind of situation happened after becoming a god slayer, it would be fine. But I met those two before I became a god slayer. If it weren't for my good luck, I would have died a long time ago. To be able to successfully kill a god and become a god slayer, it was basically luck. Noah didn't know how many times he had heard this sentence in the past few days since he came to this world. But when Noah really killed a god and recalled the whole process, he finally understood how accurate this sentence was. For example, Noah was able to successfully use the Black Tea King to steal Welaslana's white horse because of Welaslana's carelessness, underestimation, and luck. Another example was that he was able to perfectly buy the time to activate the fairy sphere. It was also because Mekl did not want to be outdone and wrestled with Bio. He even pressed Welaslana under him. Otherwise, Mekl could have turned into lightning and escaped Bio's control. Then, under the attack of the spatial turbulence, the fairy sphere was able to survive and protect Noah from being affected by the spatial turbulence. At the same time, luck played a part in it. In the end, if Erica and Liliana hadn't arrived at the scene in time, Noah would have fallen into the sea and drowned. Wasn't this luck? With all these factors added together, Noah was finally able to kill two of the highest level gods at the same time. Although Noah's own strength and planning played a key role in this, the element of luck couldn't be ignored. Now that he thought about it, Noah felt like he was being watched over by the world. Tony must have felt it, but his tone was still indifferent. But you still succeeded in the end. It's fine as long as you succeed. Tony's voice on the other end of the phone became a little more excited. Then you've successfully obtained authority. And 2 at that, right? Hearing that, Noah really wanted to tell Tony that he had only obtained 1 authority, the 10 avatars. However, he could use them as 10 authorities to give this idiot a good beating. But on second thought, if Noah were to really reveal this information, not only would he not be able to explain how he obtained such a cheat-like authority, but if the target was Tony, that battle maniac, he would definitely not be affected. Instead, he would be even happier, right? Do you want to know? Noah gave such an answer. Then why don't you come and try? You're right. Tony's voice became more cheerful. Then I'll wait here for you. Don't let me wait too long. After saying that, Tony hung up the phone, causing a busy tone to come from Noah's phone. That idiot. Noah pursed his lips and passed the phone to Liliana, who was standing beside him. Thank you. Liliana took the phone in silence. Her red lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to say something. However, Erica beat her to it. Forgive me for being blunt, Your Majesty. Erica looked straight at Noah. Do you really intend to fight Sarbatriking? Looking at Erica's thoughtful eyes, Noah shrugged as if he had seen through what Erica was thinking. I can't help it. After all, we agreed on this beforehand, didn't we? This isn't a wise decision. Liliana took a step forward, and looked at Noah with a serious expression. "You're the king of God's layers. You should consider the people around you. I think a battle between two kings of God's layers will bring great harm to the people around you. I implore you to reconsider, Your Majesty." On the side, although Erica didn't say anything more, it was obvious that she had the same concerns as Liliana. Otherwise, she wouldn't have asked such a question. Both Erica and Liliana knew that Noah and Tony had an agreement to fight after Noah became a godslayer. However, Erica and Liliana didn't take it seriously before. Was it that easy to become a godslayer? Compared to Noah successfully killing a god, Erica and Liliana were more inclined to believe that Noah would fail to challenge a god. What they considered was how to deal with the aftermath of Noah's failure, how to deal with the battle between the two gods of disobedience, and how to persuade Tony to rush over. In the end, Noah really succeeded in killing a god and became a godslayer. Naturally, he had to fulfill his agreement with Tony. In this regard, Erica and Liliana, who had spent all their energy thinking about what to do after Noah's failure, had no way to deal with this result. But there was no doubt that if the battle between the two gods of disobedience had the ability to sink an island, then the result of the battle between the two godslayers, even if it was inferior to the former, would still bring about losses that others didn't want to see. Erica and Liliana naturally had to find a way to stop it. At the very least, they had to minimize the losses caused by the battle between the two kings of disobedience. "Don't worry," Noah waved his hand casually. "I'm not stupid enough to start a battle of that level in a place where there are people. No, it's not a matter of whether there are people or not. The loss of buildings is also a loss." Erica and Liliana wanted to say this, but because Noah had fully considered the safety of others, it would be really overboard to ask a king of disobedience for some buildings. Erica and Liliana could only swallow this bitter fruit, and they were already prepared to let the Italian Magic Association bear this loss. Sure enough, the godslayers were a group of troublemakers. Fortunately, in the battle with Welslana and Meckel, Noah did not suffer any injuries. The reason why he was unconscious for 3 days was entirely due to the changes caused by the conflict between the reincarnation of a godslayer and the power in his body. Therefore, after waking up, Noah not only did not feel any discomfort in his body, but he also felt quite energetic because of his reincarnation as a godslayer. It was as if he was ready to fight anytime and anywhere. In this way, Noah naturally had no reason to continue to stay in bed. Accompanied by Erica and Liliana, he left Sardinia that day and arrived in Rome when it was almost dark. Noah wanted to head straight to the hotel where Tony was staying, but almost as soon as he exited the airport, Erica and Liliana called out to him, as though they knew it was the right time. "Wait a minute, Your Majesty," Liliana said. "Before meeting you, there is a lord who wants to see you first." Noah suddenly stopped in his tracks. Erica looked at Noah and smiled unhurriedly. "You should have heard of the Sage Council, right?" The full name of the Sage Council was the Sage Council of Greenwich. Noah heard from Andre that this council seemed to collect information about the godslayers from all over the world and study the power of the godslayer. They would also name the power of the godslayer. To put it simply, rather than calling it an organization, it was more like an intelligence center and research facility that specialized in collecting information. However, the objects of the intelligence and research of this Sage Council were not ordinary people, but focused on the godslayers and the god of disobedience. Since Erica mentioned the Sage Council, most of the people who wanted to see Noah were from the Sage Council. When Noah thought of this, Erica also confirmed Noah's guess. "The former president of the council wants to see you." Chapter 481. The Sage Parliament of Greenwich was different from the Copper and Black Cross, and the Bronze and Black Cross. It was not a magic society. At its most extreme, the Sage Parliament was just like a mutual aid society. In the beginning, the Wise Men's Council was just a simple group of members who exchanged knowledge of the occult. If there was a member who had reached a bottleneck in their research, the rest of the members would also lend a helping hand in terms of economics, academics, and so on. Later on, the Wise Men's Parliament set up many independent research institutions one after another. They also set up educational institutions called academies, gaining great authority and creating the unique nature of the Wise Men's Parliament. However, the purpose of the Sage Parliament's existence was not really to study the occult of this world, but to survive. The Sage Parliament was set up in the 19th century during the Victorian era in England. At that time, the most senior of the deicide, who had lived the longest, was also living in the capital of the British Empire, which was developing rapidly. That god slayer was not a good person. He was even more ridiculous than Tony, who was a battle maniac. He would treat gods as prey to satisfy his own interests. He would also kill at will because of his mood. He treated human life as a joke and was unscrupulous. It was said that such an existence visited Queen Victoria with a playful attitude at that time. In order to protect England and the Queen of England from the threat of the dangerous deicide, the Wise Men's Parliament was officially established to study the deicide. Thus, the nature of the Wise Men's Council continued, creating the existence of the Wise Men's Council that would study the god slayer. Although the Sage Council was not a magic society, in order to research the god slayer, the Council of Sages had gathered many people with sufficient power and ability. Among them, the most outstanding was the special advisor of the Sage Parliament, the former speaker with the title of Princess. It was said that the former speaker was an outstanding student, known as Princess. She was the daughter of Duke Goding. Not only was she a witch with enough spiritual power to brag about, but she was also recommended to be the Speaker of the Sage Parliament when she was only 16 years old. She was extremely knowledgeable. However, later on, for some unknown reason, this person who was known as the Princess stepped down from the position of the chairman and went into seclusion behind the scenes. On the surface, this princess only held the position of special advisor in the Sage Parliament, but in reality, she was still the person with the highest authority in the Sage Parliament. For something as important as the birth of a new god slayer, the Sage Parliament would definitely receive news of it immediately. But for the princess to personally come out to meet someone is something that has never happened before. As they walked toward the agreed meeting place, Erica mentioned it casually. Presumably, that person should know that the two kings are about to duel in the capital of Italy, so he came to Rome in person, right? Noah could only smile bitterly in his heart as he knew what Erica was implying. It seemed that although the magicians of this world respected the godslayers as kings, they secretly treated them as if they were dangerous people, which proved the saying, being with a king is like being with a tiger. Noah didn't know what kind of people the rest of the godslayers were. But judging from Tony's personality, if the godslayers were all people who lived unscrupulously, it was no wonder that others would treat them as dangerous people. In this regard, Noah naturally wouldn't say anything, nor would he make any promises, nor would he work hard to prove that he was different. He shook his head, ignored Erica's profound remarks and Liliana, who nodded repeatedly, and walked forward. This also made Erica and Liliana give up persuading him. They were completely silent as they led Noah to the agreed meeting place. Not long after, the three of them arrived at a hotel. Compared to the hotel Tony was currently in, this hotel was not large in scale, giving people a feeling that it was ordinary and unsubstantial. However, as soon as Noah, Erica, and Liliana entered the hotel, a person dressed as a waiter immediately came out and respectfully led the three of them into a room in the hotel. There, a person had already arrived and was quietly waiting for Noah's arrival. "I've been waiting for a long time, Your Majesty." The one who said this was a dignified young lady sitting on a sofa. She looked like a dignified lady. The young lady was wearing a high-class white coat. Underneath the coat was a knitted dress and panties. She wore black boots on her feet. Her bright platinum hair hung softly on her back and slender shoulders. Her entire body exuded an extremely noble temperament. Her temperament was even above Erica's. "I'm Alice Louise of Navarre." The noble young lady stood up. Her every movement had a sense of elegance, but her tone was quite relaxed, giving people the feeling that she was speaking from the bottom of her heart, without any pretense. "Your Majesty, you can just call me Alice." Looking at the scene where Alice still exuded a noble and gorgeous temperament, even when she didn't do anything special, Liliana, who had a more serious personality, froze on the spot, not knowing how to react. Erica, on the other hand, had an eager expression on her face, as if she wanted to compete with the young lady with the title of princess in the way of a noblewoman. She wanted to show off her beauty, confidence, and temperament. If it weren't for Noah, she might have actually stepped forward. After all, this was a conversation between the God-Slayer and the former president of the Sage Parliament. Be it in terms of identity, status, or obligation, Erica and Liliana should keep their mouths shut and show enough respect to the king who killed the God-Slayer and the beautiful princess. However, Noah, who was supposed to respond to the princess' greetings, frowned slightly. He glanced at Alice, and after a while his expression turned to surprise. This feeling, you're not yourself, but in existence like a clone, right? After hearing that, Erica and Liliana were both stunned. Alice was also stunned on the spot, but then she nodded in admiration. As expected of the king, who was able to kill two of the highest level god of disobedience before becoming a God-Slayer. To be able to see through my true colors at a glance. Even the rest of the God-Slayers would not be able to do so. You are really amazing. However, this should be called a ghost body. In the world of magic, it can also be called a plasma body. To put it in a very rough way, it is a soul clone created through mental induction. The real me is now sleeping in a bed in London. Alice blinked her eyes mischievously. I'm not being disrespectful to the king, but my body can't support me on such a long journey from London to Rome. So please forgive me, Your Majesty. Upon hearing this, Noah remembered that Alice had stepped down from her position as the president of the Sage Parliament and went into seclusion behind the scenes. Alice looked to be only in her 20s, about the same age as Noah. At this age, girls should be more active, but Alice had stepped down from her position as the president and chose to retire. That should be because of Alice's poor health, right? I don't mind this kind of thing. Noah shook his head and looked at Alice. Compared to this, I'm more concerned about the reason you called me here. There are two reasons. Alice didn't beat around the bush and said with an elegant smile. The first reason is to see what kind of king can kill the two highest level god of disobedience at the same time before becoming a God-Slayer. I see. Noah raised his eyebrows. Your Sage Parliament is an organization that specializes in studying God-Slayers. So you're here now to test me? No matter what, this is too rude to the king. I naturally won't do such a thing. Alice denied with a smile. Why don't you just take it as a young girl's curiosity at its peak? Noah immediately took a deep look at Alice and curled his lips into a smile. Then what's the second reason? I believe the king has already guessed it. Alice looked at Noah closely. It's about your duel with Ching. Chapter 482. When Alice stated the second reason for her visit, Erica and Liliana both showed an as expected expression. Noah was the only one who felt extremely helpless when he heard that Alice was treating his duel with Tony as a major event. I already said that I would pay attention to the surroundings and not let ordinary people get involved. At most, I'll just destroy some buildings. Is there a need to be so exaggerated? Noah naturally didn't think that it was exaggerated, because this was also considered a good tradition of fairy tale, right? With Makarov as the leader, the magic shooters of fairy tale had always been unscrupulous. Needless to say, the teams of Naz, Gray, Elisha, Lucy, and the others would usually be unable to stop themselves because of some trivial matters when they were on a mission. They would even destroy half of the city where they were on a mission. And Makarov himself treated the council as trouble. Generally, the council's warnings would go in one ear and out the other, and only the especially important parts would be remembered in his heart. Coming from fairy tale, with such a group of troublemakers, Noah really didn't take one or two buildings seriously. Of course, it wasn't that Noah didn't have common sense, but the trouble brought about by being indecisive during a battle was extraordinarily big, and Noah didn't want to be restrained because of this. After all, Noah was still a relatively strong person. It was fine to be scrupulous about the lives of ordinary innocent people. But if he still had to be scrupulous about not destroying the environment and not damaging the flowers and plants during a battle, then what was the point of fighting? He might as well go home and embroider. This was also the reason why Noah could lure Welslana and Mecca away for the safety of the residents of Sardinia, but could also shatter the uninhabited island and even the space itself for victory. To be precise, this cognition was not wrong. Being overcautious during a battle was obviously courting death. However, from an outsider's point of view, the trouble caused by this was not ordinary. Even the former president of the wise parliament has come to Rome to persuade you. Here, as a king, you should show your magnanimity and listen to our opinions. What do you think? Erica chose the right time to interrupt. After all, this is the capital of Italy. Salbalay isn't the type to care about his surroundings when fighting. At this time, we can only hope that the other king is rational. Although I don't want to admit Erica's words, I also think you should consider this point, Liliana said to Noah as though she was advising him. If it's possible, please cancel your duel with Salbalay Ching. Noah was silent, but his eyes were fixed on Alice, which made her feel suspicious. Excuse me, is there anything strange about me? It's not like that. Noah suddenly smiled and spread his hands. I'm just thinking that even though the duel between the godslayers is rare, the god of disobedience can also bring about the impact of a battle of that level. Just like how I killed Welslana and Mecca. And the godslayers will travel all over the world to deal with the god of disobedience that appears on the ground and fight with the god of disobedience. Logically speaking, even if the impact of a battle of this level is great, the frequency of it happening isn't low, right? Noah looked at Alice with a spurious smile. Then, does the former president of the wise parliament stop every battle of this type? Isn't that too busy? Alice held her breath. After hearing Noah's words, Erica and Liliana were also puzzled. Just like what Noah said, the impact of the battle between the Godslayer and the Godslayer, the Godslayer and the Godslayer, and the Godslayer and the Godslayer had almost the same impact. But the number of times it happened was also not small. Under such circumstances, Erica and Liliana had never heard of Princess Alice personally taking action to stop a battle like this. She was indeed too busy. So this time, why did Princess Alice take action personally? Was it because one of the Godslayers was just born and killed two of the highest level gods at the same time? Why did she have to come and test the waters? In that case, there was no need to specially create a soul clone when she felt so unwell that she needed to abdicate, right? All right, Your Highness, you'd better state your purpose. Noah curled his lips. If you want to rely on such flawed persuasion to make me do as you wish, that won't work. Alice couldn't help but be at a loss for words and let out a bitter laugh. It seems like the king born this time isn't just an outstanding warrior, but also an incredible tactician. You're overpraising me. I'm not a tactician, but that doesn't mean that I don't know how to use my brain, Noah said with a smile. So, it won't work if you think you can fool me with some petty tricks. You're a princess. Don't tell me you want me to threaten you like a villain before you tell me the truth, right? That feeling of being naughty isn't bad either. It might tempt me a little. Alice's voice became brisk again. Her beautiful eyes met Noah's eyes directly. Actually, Your Majesty's outstanding battle record has attracted some unfriendly people. I heard that you're about to have a duel with Minister Sarbaret, and he seems to have come to Rome, Italy. Not a very friendly person? Noah raised his eyebrows. Princess Alice. Erica took a step forward and asked, are you saying that someone wants to harm Your Majesty during the duel between the two kings? Isn't that too stupid? Liliana frowned. They actually want to harm Your Majesty. Could it be an evil organization of magicians? If that's all, I wouldn't have to come here to remind you. Alice shook her head, her gaze still fixed on Noah. I wonder if Your Majesty has heard of the godly ancestor? Godly ancestor? Noah pondered for a moment. After making sure that he had never heard of this term, he looked at Alice. What's that? It's an existence that was born through reincarnation after the death of Gaia under certain special circumstances. Alice glanced at Liliana. The ancestors of witches and witches like me and Miss Liliana used to serve Gaia. The godly ancestor is the reincarnation of Gaia. It can be said that the witches and witches of modern times can be considered as the distant descendants of the godly ancestor. You mean? Noah asked Alice in an uncertain tone. The person who's secretly watching me is the godly ancestor? I don't know if he's watching your majesty, but I did receive news that he came to Rome after your majesty became the god slayer, Alice said worriedly. Although I don't know if he's watching your majesty, if he's planning something, he'll definitely do something bad during the duel between you and Sir Barrett. That was why Alice appeared and wanted to stop the duel between Noah and Tony. The godly ancestor? Noah touched his chin. Is he very strong? No, but in terms of strength, the godly ancestor is only at the same level as the mythical beasts. If we use the human level to classify them, they're at the level of the Holy Knight. Even if they're above the Holy Knight level, the difference isn't that great, Alice said. That may be the highest level of enemies for humans, but for a king who kills gods, with a sweep of his authority, even 100 enemies of that level would die in an instant, right? However, the godly ancestor used to be the Gaia of Gaia. There's a seal in her body that allows her to regain the strength and appearance of the Gaia in a short period of time at the cost of her life. She can then transform into the god of disobedience, Alice reminded him. Even your majesty shouldn't underestimate the godly ancestor. I understand what you mean. Noah's eyes flashed and he said calmly. However, since we can't confirm the purpose of the other party, it's not appropriate to change the schedule suddenly, right? We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Noah stopped Alice, who seemed to want to say something else, and smiled. That smile was slightly cold. No matter what, if you want to do something to me, then be prepared to be bitten in the back. Chapter 483. In the end, the meeting between Noah and Alice ended with an inconclusive result. The content of the meeting was equivalent to telling Noah that there was an arrogant person hiding in the dark in Ramali, Italy, who would target the deicide. It was very likely that this person would take the opportunity to do something when Noah and Tony were dueling. Because of this, Alice specially made a trip to Rome, Italy, to persuade Noah to give up the duel with Tony. However, Noah had no intention of giving up the duel with Tony. The agreement was one thing, and whether it would cause damage to the surroundings was another. Most importantly, given Tony's character, if he gave up the duel for such a reason, the idiot who would do anything to satisfy his desire for battle would definitely stir up the whole of Italy. Be it Alice, Erica, or Liliana, there was no way they wouldn't understand this. Therefore, after some hesitation, Alice had no choice but to give up and stay in Italy. It seemed that she was not going to leave before the duel between Noah and Tony ended. Before leaving, Alice also left Noah such a sentence. The god ancestor also has some connections with the Black Prince. If he knows that the god ancestor has come to Italy, then the Black Prince is very likely to come here as well. Although I don't want to admit it, that man is a dangerous person, who will even plot against his own kind when necessary. Please be careful. After leaving this sentence, Alice left the hotel. Looking at Alice's disappearing figure, Noah fell into deep thought. Alexander Gascoigne, known as Yarek, was a nobleman known as the Black Prince. Needless to say, the person who was specially mentioned by Alice was a god slayer, like Noah and Tony. Noah also heard the basic information about the god slayers, who were still alive in the world from Paul and Andre. Among them, the Black Prince Yarek was also mentioned. It was said that he was different from the other god slayers. He was full of intelligence, good at scheming, and did not like to fight head-on. He was used to devising strategies to counterattack his enemies. The Black Prince Yarek's most famous power was the ability to allow him to enter a state of incredible speed, lightning spark. Once he used lightning sparks, Yarek's speed would increase to the true meaning of god speed. If it was more accurate to describe it, it would be the so-called lightning speed. Therefore, Yarek was also known as the Prince of Godly Speed. This power was almost exactly the same as the power of the Phoenix in Noah's 10 incarnations. In addition, the other party was also good at strategizing. That was why Alice specifically mentioned it, telling Noah to be careful of this fellow, who was very likely to come to Italy. We've just dealt with the invincible military god and the divine king of the Mediterranean Sea. Now, not only do we have to deal with that idiot Tony, but we also have to deal with the so-called god ancestor and his kind. Noah sighed heavily. In this world, I really can't stay idle. The Black Prince leads a magic association called the Royal Factory, which is hostile to the Sage Parliament, which was once led by Princess Alice, Erica said proudly, intentionally or unintentionally, with her chest out. In order to fight against the Black Prince, Princess Alice once joined forces with my uncle to fight against the Black Prince. Fight against the God Slayers. Noah looked at Liliana in astonishment. The princess and Mr. Paul joined forces to fight against the God Slayers? If it's a head-on confrontation in terms of strength, then it's impossible. Otherwise, the God Slayers would not be called the Demon King. Liliana's face was tense. However, Lord Paul is indeed an outstanding knight. In the battle against the Black Prince, after joining forces with Princess Alice, that lord still left behind many glorious achievements for humans. Thus, he obtained the title of Crimson Demon, and is a holy knight of the highest level. Just like you, before you became the God Slayer, didn't you also block Mr. Salba's demon sword? Liliana glanced at Noah. Even if you can't fight against Mr. Salba, it's a fact that you blocked Mr. Salba's demon sword. That's quite an amazing achievement. Compared to you at that time, Princess Alice and Mr. Paul only achieved a similar achievement after joining forces. But it's still amazing for the human race. I'm not afraid to tell you that my goal is to inherit the title of the Crimson Demon left by my uncle. No, it should be said that it's my ambition. It's something I must do. Erica had a fierce smile on her face. If the Black Prince really comes to Italy, I'm looking forward to fighting with him. Erica, Liliana was speechless. Don't tell me you really want to fight against the God Slayer? Lily, didn't you say that it's impossible to compete in terms of strength? But the example of Princess Lily and Uncle also told us that apart from strength, there are many other ways for us to deal with the God Slayer. Aaliyah said with a fearless smile. No matter what, I'm not so self-righteous as to think that I can defeat a God Slayer with my strength. Lily, you don't have to worry about me. I'll be satisfied as long as I can obtain the merit of inheriting the title of the Crimson Demon. Liliana seemed to want to say something, but in the end, she chose not to say it. She turned her head away and fell into silence. Seeing this scene, Noah understood the relationship between Erica and Liliana. Although the Copper Black Cross and the Bronze Black Cross were enemies, Erica and Liliana were not only the only two prodigies in Italy who had obtained the rank of Grand Knight when they were still underage, but they were also childhood sweethearts. Each of them regarded the other as their competitor. Even if it was not obvious on the surface, Erica and Liliana did have a good relationship. They both cared about each other from the bottom of their hearts, right? Just as Noah, Erica, and Liliana fell into an indescribable silence at the same time, an extremely terrifying curse power and aura suddenly rose from the sky outside and gradually approached. Erica and Liliana were shocked at the same time. Their hearts tightened, and they subconsciously tensed up their bodies and entered a battle stance. This aura, Noah's eyes suddenly narrowed, but a smile appeared on his face. That's right. He heard that I've returned to Italy, but I didn't go directly to him. That idiot will definitely rush over because he can't wait, right? With that, Noah lifted his feet and walked out of the hotel. Could it be that the owner of this cursed power is? Erica seemed to understand something, and hurriedly said to Liliana, Quick, Lily, let's evacuate the surrounding crowd. Liliana also seemed to understand Erica's thoughts, and rushed out with Erica without saying a word. As Noah walked out of the hotel, a figure surrounded by terrifying curse power and aura came into his sight. The person was holding a long box in his hand. As he walked in the direction of Noah, he took out a crude knight's sword from the long box and stared at Noah. His eyes shone with an unprecedented bright light. I swear here that I will not allow anything that I can't cut to exist. This sword can cut through everything on the ground. It's an invincible blade. when the invincible words slowly came out of Tony's mouth, the massive curse power on his body flowed into his hand, turning the hand holding the sword into a silver steel arm. Seeing this, a glint appeared in Noah's eyes as he slowly walked forward. I am the strongest, and I hold all victory in my hands. Be it human or demon, I am the one who destroys the hostility of all enemies. I will destroy any enemy that stands in my way. Noah's authority was based on Wells Lana, fusing Noah's own power with Mecker's power to create 10 clones. Therefore, the words Noah chanted were also Wells Lana's holy words. These words could make the curse power and power in Noah's body active and boil, allowing him to exert more than 120% of his power. There was no need for words or pleasantries. The next moment, two massive waves of curse power collided. Chapter 484. He would use a period of time to explore his new power, and then come back to fight Tony. This was the first thought that came to Noah when he first reincarnated as a god slayer, and realized that his power system had undergone a great change. But after that, Noah found that this idea was a big mistake, because it was a complete waste of time. The great ritual left behind by Epimetheus and Pandora, to reincarnate a human as a god slayer. Perhaps because it was too messy, there were many strange problems. On the surface, the god slayer was only similar to human beings, but its nature was actually more similar to that of wild beasts, magical beasts, mythical beasts, and even gods. Naturally, even the rest of its body would be very similar to that of humans. And just like how a beast would not work hard to learn how to bite its prey, it was completely impossible for a god slayer to learn how to do it on the ground. Therefore, the god slayer's authority could only be honed on the battlefield and in actual combat. In other words, as long as he continued to fight, Noah's authority would become stronger and stronger, and the authority would become more and more familiar to him, and naturally, he would be able to practice it. Of course, unlike other god slayers, Noah could not only make his authority stronger and stronger in battle, but also because the ability to limit was integrated into his authority. As long as Noah did not use his authority would enter a state of self-enhancement. However, once he entered a combat state, his authority would become more and more proficient, and he would be able to use it naturally. This was a fact that was true. Therefore, when Tony came in front of Noah with a violent battle intent and curse power, Noah's whole body and mind heated up, and he instantly entered a state of combat. It was at this time that the spirit of language, which made the curse power and power boil, and allowed him to exert more than 120% of his power, suddenly appeared in Noah's mind, and was chanted by Noah. Immediately after that, the methods of using the authority of the 10 avatars of Storm, Giant, White Horse, Draconian, Golden Wolf, Priest, Phoenix, Elf, Thunder, and Warrior emerged from the depths of Noah's memory, including a deeper level of application and ability. Noah did not know that even if he entered a state of combat, it was very illegal to obtain such an exaggerated level of proficiency and use of the authority at the beginning. Logically speaking, when he first became a god slayer, Noah's first battle would at most obtain 2 or 3 avatars to use. It would be too exaggerated to be proficient in all of them at once. However, it was unknown whether it was because of Noah's physique, or because Noah was different from other god slayers, and directly absorbed the power of God, and made it his own. Noah was so lucky that he understood how to use his authority well. Therefore, the moment Tony rushed over, Noah stopped in his tracks, and the curse power in his body was raised. I, with my violent heart, cover the sky tightly and declare, roll up a storm for me, rain for me, and never allow you to disobey my command. When this sentence, which seemed to be a declaration to heaven and earth, slowly reverberated, the sky suddenly turned dark. A thick layer of dark clouds appeared out of nowhere, and covered the entire sky, causing an oppressive atmosphere to pervade the whole world. Tony, who was rushing in Noah's direction, did not even have time to swing his demonic sword when he suddenly felt a strong sense of danger in his heart. His expression tightened, and he stopped moving, and without hesitation, he stepped on the ground and retreated. Whoosh! Almost at the same time, a tornado suddenly descended from the dark clouds. It cut through the air at an incredible speed and fiercely landed on the ground. Bang! Accompanied by a loud noise, the ground touched by the tornado seemed to have been drilled into by something terrible. It suddenly exploded into scattered fragments and rocks and was swept into the tornado. The tornado fell exactly where Tony was just a second ago. Kacha kacha! The ground that was touched by the tornado continued to crack, turning into pieces of gravel and rock. They were sucked into the tornado and spread to the surroundings. Kacha kacha! In the surroundings, the buildings began to make creepy cracking sounds, and they were on the verge of collapsing. Not long after, some of the smaller buildings were uprooted and sucked into the tornado, twisting into pieces. Looking at the tornado that suddenly fell from the sky and instantly turned the ground with a range of more than 100 meters into a deep pit, uprooting and crushing buildings, and rolling up gravel and rocks, and spreading to the surroundings, not to mention Tony, even Noah could not help but be shocked. Storm, an incarnation formed by combining Wellislana's incarnation of strong wind and Mecker's storm. It could cause a strong storm, and to a certain extent, it could dominate the sky and summon a storm. Noah knew the ability of this incarnation of storm, but he did not expect it to be so strong. Dominating the sky, Noah had seen it. However, what was this so-called strong storm all about? This had directly summoned a tornado and raised the surrounding area to the ground. The scale of that tornado was no joke. It was definitely comparable to those natural catastrophes. Was the power of an incarnation so exaggerated? No wonder Erica and Liliana were so afraid of the battle of the God Slayer. In fact, Noah did not think about it. The incarnation of storm was formed by combining the powers of the two highest level gods, and it was a world of difference from the power of an incarnation of Wellislana. Even Wellislana's incarnation of strong wind could cause a tornado, and Mecker dominated the entire sky, causing Sardinia to fall into the range of the power of storm. Now, after the fusion of strong wind and storm, the storm naturally had the possibility of going up a level. It would definitely not be weak. Therefore, it was not that the God Slayer was too frightening, but Noah's storm incarnation physique, created by the fusion of the power of strong wind and storm, was truly frightening. To put it bluntly, the power of the 10 incarnations formed after the fusion of physiques was terrifyingly strong. After all, that was the power formed by the fusion of the power of one person and two gods, Noah, Wellislana, and Mecker. How could it be weak? With the 10 incarnations, Noah's strength had already been raised to another dimension, and he was definitely not weaker than any God Slayer in this world. That was the truth. Oh, while Noah was still surprised by the huge scale of the tornado, on the other side, Tony was affected by the rapidly expanding tornado. With a loud cry, his body was directly involved in the tornado, a sword that can pierce through all enemies with a single wave. In order to deprive all life, host the glory Tony, who had seen with his own eyes the fate of the buildings involved in the tornado, did not hesitate to chant the spirit of words. His right hand that had turned into steel flashed with a silver radiance and poured into the knight's sword. Clang! In the next moment, a brilliant sword light suddenly appeared from the tornado. From top to bottom, it pierced through space and swept past the huge tornado that was still expanding in an extremely orderly manner. Poochie! Under the slash of the magic sword that could cut through everything in the world, even the tornado that was comparable to a natural disaster trembled and was neatly cut in half. When Noah saw this, he reacted to the situation and instinctively chanted the spirit of words. Wind, wind, don't let the enemy escape. Offer up your final glory. As soon as his voice fell, the tornado that was neatly cut in half stagnated. Then, as if something had expanded from within, it suddenly exploded. Boom! Amidst the violent loud noise, the huge tornado directly exploded, turning into a shockwave that spread out in all directions. Chapter 485. Boom! The loud sound that made people's hearts shrink turned into a sound wave, reverberating under the dark sky, and constantly reverberating like an echo. The huge tornado suddenly burst open, turning into an impact wave that surged in all directions like a tide, covering every corner of the surrounding area. Pa 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 pa. At this moment, whether it was the ground, the asphalt road, the buildings, or the vehicles parked around, they were all swept up by the violent impact wave, and even crushed by the strong wind pressure, turning into small pieces of debris that shot around like bullets. As a result, even Noah himself was affected by the shockwaves. His body was blown away, and he did not know how many times he rolled in the air before he reacted. He used the power of the storm incarnation to calm down the wind that was acting on his body and summoned by himself. It was not until now that Noah finally understood what the incarnation of the storm was all about, and what it meant to be able to cause a strong storm. The storm in this sentence didn't refer to the literal storm, but violent wind, including gale, whirlwind, typhoon, and even tornado. These winds that could be called violent could be caused when Noah used the incarnation of storm, and they could be freely controlled by Noah according to his will. Of course, because it was the first time he used the incarnation of storm, Noah couldn't control the power of storm at will. As a result, he summoned the largest tornado. If the tornado just now continued to expand, then, in the end, even the whole of Italy could be covered with a supergiant tornado, and it would really destroy the whole of Italy. However, at that time, whether Noah's curse power could support the expansion of the tornado to the extent that it could cover the whole of Italy was unknown. Noah, who had calmed down the wind, landed on the ground and looked forward, and then his expression became wonderful. Gone. Everything was gone, as far as the eye could see, except for the place behind Noah, and an unknown distance away. The asphalt road, buildings, cars, and the ground that should have existed there had all disappeared. What was left was only a huge deep pit, and scattered pieces of debris of various buildings, asphalt roads, and cars all over the pit. Seeing this scene, Noah's heart started to beat uncontrollably. It was caused by the shock of his current power, and the fear of the consequences. Erica and Liliana should have gone to evacuate the crowd, right? After glancing around the deep pit, Noah, who found no trace of anyone, murmured this sentence like a prayer. If he didn't know that Erica and Liliana would definitely evacuate the crowd the moment he walked out of the hotel, Noah wouldn't have directly confronted Tony. Now, Noah could only pray that Erica and Liliana could evacuate the crowd in time. Otherwise, he would really be guilty. Ha 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 ha. At this moment, a loud laugh sounded from one of the piles of debris in the huge pit. You're indeed worthy of being my opponent. You've just become my kind, and you already have such a degree of power. I was right about you. Tony, who was laughing joyfully, pushed away the debris piled on top of him, and stood up with a bang. Taking a closer look, Tony was not injured at all in the impact that seemed to be able to destroy the world. This was because nearly 100 cuneiform imprints appeared around Tony, as if they were protecting him, and they were slowly fluctuating. Noah recognized those characters. They were the runic characters that originated from Northern Europe. Of course, that was not the runic magic that Noah had mastered before, but the sacred characters that originated from the myths and were mastered and used by the god of magic. That was no longer magic or magic, but the real power of God. The power of authority. In front of him was the huge pit that he created, and behind him was the perfect environment. Standing on the edge of the line, Noah cast his gaze on the cuneiform text on Tony's body, which was the rune text that was fluctuating around Tony. As you can see, this is my second authority. Tony felt Noah's gaze on him, patted his body and lifted his knight's sword. Those people from the parliament seem to call it steel protection. It allows me to transform my entire body into steel. No matter if its weight or hardness, it will be increased to an unimaginable level. With such a body, even that tornado you used just now won't be able to do anything to me. Furthermore, because of the increase in weight, if you were to be hit by my fist, that wouldn't be a joke. Tony laughed. That's practically immortal. But no one knew it without Tony saying it out loud. As an expert in the field of runic characters, Noah could tell at a glance that the characters surrounding Tony were the steel runic characters. The effect of the characters was similar to the hardened runic characters. Both characters could increase the hardness and weight of the user. However, there were pros and cons when comparing steel and hardened. For example, the steel runic characters could increase the hardness and weight to the level of the toughest steel, but it would also be fixed at the steel level of hardness. On the other hand, the hardened runic characters could be continuously increased. As long as there was enough magic in quantity, it would not be difficult to increase the hardness of steel. However, that was only when compared to the steel runic characters. Moreover, the steel runic characters were at the level of magic. The runic characters on Tony's body were at the level of authority, and there were nearly 100 of them. Perhaps the hardness and weight of his body had reached an extremely terrifying level. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was immortal. With this body and the magic sword, these two authorities have always been the main components of my battle strength. As for the other two authorities, one of them is basically useless in battle, and the other one will affect me. If I use it, I will only use it when my life is on the line. Saying that, Tony looked at Noah with a burning gaze filled with battle intent. Can you make me use that authority? After saying that, Tony's right hand flashed with a silver light again, and a huge amount of magic power suddenly wrapped around his knight's sword. Noah, who had seen Tony's magic sword countless times, suddenly had a cold look in his eyes. In his mind, the outline of the stone plate connecting the 10 incarnations suddenly turned, and a pointer on the stone plate stopped on another image. Fear those with wings. Both the evil and the powerful fear me because of my wings. My wings will bring you a curse, and the evil will not be able to hit me. A brand new language burst out from Noah's mouth, and turned into a new power that filled Noah's body. Then Noah felt it. His vision, senses, and thoughts were all going through super acceleration. On the contrary, everything around him was going through super acceleration. At this moment, Noah obtained a speed that surpassed everything. Thus, Noah took a step to the side. In Tony's eyes, Noah's figure seemed to have turned into a phantom, as he abruptly teleported to the side, for an extremely long distance. Clang! At the same time, a sword flashed past Noah's original position and landed in the air. Noah, who had entered the super speed state, clearly saw this scene. He curled the corners of his mouth and shot towards Tony like a phantom. Before Tony could react, he suddenly appeared in front of him and punched towards Tony's chest. However, what happened next shocked Noah greatly. That was because the fist that was supposed to hit Tony's chest drew a huge arc and hit empty space. Phoenix, the authority from Velislana, which allowed one to obtain a speed that surpassed everything. However, although Noah obtained a speed that was too high, due to the excessive speed, his attacks could not accurately land on his target. Therefore, Noah's punch that was supposed to land on Tony's chest went past Tony's position due to the excessive speed. It was the same principle that if a person were to run at full speed, they would not be able to control their body due to inertia, and would only be able to stop after a certain distance. This incarnation is a little troublesome. Chapter 486. Chi. Amidst the faint sound of breaking air, a figure suddenly flashed in front of Tony like a meteor. Then it directly passed by Tony and rushed to the back of Tony. That was the scene when Noah couldn't accurately control his attack, causing his fist to hit the air, and his figure to directly pass by Tony. It was a tornado just now, and now it's super speed. Could it be that the tornado was the power that you stole from Mekhl, who controlled the sky, the storm, and the lightning, and this super speed was stolen from Velislana? Tony was shocked when he realized what was going on, and his face was brimming with a bright smile. That's similar to Yarek's authority, but I heard that when he first obtained this authority, he suffered a lot because of it. There are a lot of problems with using this authority of Godspeed. It's not something that can do a lot of things. For example, the inability to accurately attack was one of the problems. In addition, entering the super speed state would make Noah's senses go through super speed. If he kept in this state, It would be like entering a world where time was constantly increasing, and it would make his senses dull. As for the other problems that would cause side effects to the body, they were eliminated by Noah's physique. Even so, there were many problems with the super speed brought by the Phoenix avatar. Also, although the speed is amazing, it's a pity that it's just speed. It's useless against me. Tony raised the knight's sword in his hand, and his eyes bloomed with a terrifying look like a wild beast. I've trained my eyesight a little too much. For example, I'll stare at the falling rain seriously and aim at one of the raindrops. The moment the raindrops fall in front of me, I'll swing my sword and cut the targeted raindrops in half. Thus, I've developed the ability called mind's eye in Chinese wuxia novels. So no matter how fast you are, you can't hide from my eyes. The moment he finished speaking, Tony suddenly took a step forward, as if he could see through Noah's movements. He directly stabbed the knight's sword that was surrounded by a large amount of magic. Noah, who was in the super speed state, flashed out as if he teleported. At the same time Tony's sword stabbed out, his body directly appeared in front of Tony's sword. Noah's expression changed at the sudden attack, which was like a foresight. If it was a normal person, they would have directly hit Tony's magic sword. But Noah had superb senses, and felt the trajectory of Tony's magic sword in advance. Just as Noah was about to collide with Tony's magic sword, he abruptly cancelled his phoenix transformation and leaped to the side. Clang! In the next second, Tony's magic sword flashed and swept forward, cutting the ground where Noah was originally at into two halves, creating a long gully. The sword didn't lose any momentum and continued forward with a sharp sound. At this moment, Noah's eyes flashed, and he once again used the Phoenix avatar. Wang! In the state of super speed, this punch would only land on empty space. However, the moment he raised his fist, Noah immediately cancelled the use of the Phoenix incarnation, allowing his body's speed to return to normal as he raised his fist. The giant that blots out the sky supports the heaven and earth with his hand. I will let this divine power flow into my body. From now on, I will display the ultimate power that no one can match. In Noah's mind, the stone plate connecting the 10 avatars rotated from the phoenix to the indomitable giant. Wang! At this moment, Noah felt as though his body had been directly injected with a terrifyingly powerful strength, causing his raised fist to seem as though it could split the heavens and earth. It carried with it an extremely terrifying pressure. At this moment, Tony was still in the posture of thrusting out his sword. Feeling the terrifying pressure coming from behind him, his heart fiercely tightened. Hiya! It was only for a moment. Accompanied by a violent roar, Noah raised his fist and suddenly swung it down. The air cracked as if it couldn't bear the weight. Amidst the violent sound of the explosion, a violent wind blew, and his fist landed heavily on Tony's back. Dong! Before he could even let out a scream, Tony was smashed into the ground by an unimaginably terrifying force, sinking into the ground. Bang! Like a meteor crashing into the ground, the terrifying force not only smashed Tony into the ground, but also shattered the ground, bursting out a deafening roar. As the ground trembled and shattered, the huge crater that had been created by the eruption of the huge tornado shook, and the range of the crater expanded from the original several hundred meters to a range of over 1,000 meters. In the legends, the god known as the great hero, Hercules, was a god of strength who could lift the sky. Whether it was Welslana or Mekl, they had a deep relationship with this god of strength. Therefore, Welslana's bull incarnation represented monster strength. When using this incarnation, Welslana would obtain divine power, no less than that of Hercules. Mekl's appearance was also based on Hercules, so he also had unparalleled divine power. Giant was an incarnation formed by combining Welslana's bull incarnation with Mekl's appearance. When using this incarnation, one could obtain monster strength that was far beyond the limit. Its power was enough to split mountains and rivers, just like how the incarnation of Storm became extremely terrifying after fusing with strong wind and storm. The incarnation of Giant became extremely terrifying after fusing with Welslana and Mekl's monstrous strength, which gave Noah a terrifying divine power. Of course, it was not enough to lift the sky. but it was definitely enough to split mountains and rivers. At this moment, the violent earthquake phenomenon affected the entire crater, that was over 1,000 meters wide, and even outside the crater. It was as if a shockwave had shaken the ground, slowly spreading outwards. Buildings began to sway, and some of them even collapsed. In the crater that suddenly expanded to over 1,000 meters, the buildings that were originally in the area also sank into the ground and turned into ruins. With a corner as the center, the entire crater cracked open like a spider web. It looked as if a demon was about to break through the ground and crawl out, making people feel a chill down their spine. Noah, who had punched the ground, let out a long breath and slowly retracted his fist. At this moment, he felt the superpower flowing through his body and couldn't help but glance at the human-shaped crater in front of him. Don't tell me he's dead? Tony had the steel barrier, which was called the authority of an undying body. Nearly 100 cuneiform runes that could make people as hard as steel made his body's strength reach a terrifying level. However, Noah clearly felt that his punch using the giant incarnation had indeed broken through Tony's steel barrier and landed on his body. Even so, it still brought disaster to the surrounding area. One could only imagine how terrifying the power contained in Noah's punch was. To put it bluntly, even if the giant mecha came in front of Noah, Noah was confident that he could turn him into a meteor and disappear into the sky with a single punch. This way, even if Tony had the steel barrier to counteract most of the force, it wouldn't be strange for him to die. However, Noah wasn't worried about this at all. This was because Noah knew how tenacious the life force of the God Slayer was. Even Noah had the elf incarnation that could bring the dead back to life, so Tony definitely wouldn't die so easily. But after being buried for so long, it should be possible to suffocate him to death, right? Noah looked down at the human-shaped crater in front of him and helplessly jumped in after a while. Chapter 487. When the battle between Noah and Tony came to an end, a young girl appeared on the rooftop of a building over 1,000 m away, which was lucky not to be affected by Noah's foul strength. She was a fair-skinned young girl, who was obviously not born in the East. She looked like she was only 12 or 13 years old. The young girl had blonde curly hair and an extremely beautiful face. She looked like a delicate doll, but she was not childish at all. Instead, she looked mature and coquettish. If one were to describe Pandora as a sweet and adorable girl who possessed a womanly charm, then this girl would be a little adult who deliberately pretended to be an adult, but was actually an awkward little girl on the inside. This little adult had her eyes closed at this moment. Her body was fluctuating with a faint spell that allowed her vision to leap. She was observing the battle in the center of the giant crater, like a clairvoyant. If there was a magician here, then he would definitely be able to recognize that the spell that the girl was using to make her vision leap was the witch's eye magic that only Orthodox witches could use. In other words, this young girl who looked only 12 or 13 years old was the most orthodox witch like Liliana. Through the witch's eye magic, the young girl saw Noah jump into the giant human-shaped crater that was created by attacking Tony. She silently withdrew her spell and canceled the magic. She opened her eyes and stared blankly at the giant crater in front of her. He has just become a God Slayer, and he already has such power. He even defeated the King of Swords. Is this the special thing about killing two of the highest gods before becoming a king of God Slayers? The young girl was just muttering to herself, but someone immediately answered her. To be honest, I'm very surprised too. A princess-like girl with an extremely noble temperament and an extremely beautiful appearance appeared out of thin air on the rooftop. She looked down at the exaggeratedly huge pit from a distance and let out a bitter laugh. I didn't expect this new king to be able to do this. Sure enough, the kings of God Slayers can't be evaluated by human standards. Hearing this, the young girl seemed to have noticed or expected that the princess would appear here. She turned around calmly, lifted the corner of her dress, and bowed to the noble princess who appeared out of thin air. Greetings, Princess Alice. Lord Guinevere seems to be doing very well as well. Alice returned the compliment with an impeccable etiquette and an elegant smile. Since you've come to Italy, why don't you tell Alice first? Isn't it better for Alice to welcome you? It was very strange for a noble lady in her 20s to a young girl, who looked only 12 or 13 years old, to use honorifics and etiquette. However, those who knew the situation would know that regardless of appearance, the former was less than 1/10 of the latter's age. Because Guinevere, who stood in front of Alice, was not only the goddess of the earth, but also the god ancestor, who had surpassed human wisdom after several reincarnations. Therefore, regardless of whether Alice's respect was superficial or not, the young girl named Guinevere accepted it calmly and said with an elegant smile, "Thank you for your kindness. Actually, I don't like to meet the new king in such a sneaky way. However, if I do it openly, the prince will definitely be more than happy to set up a trap that will make me regret, and then wait for me to step into it myself, right?" As she said this, Guinevere turned her head and looked to the side. "Am I right, Black Prince Yerek?" As soon as Guinevere's voice fell, a bolt of lightning suddenly flashed from where she was looking. The lightning gradually turned into a human figure, and a man surrounded by electric arcs emerged from it. The Wise Men's Council, once led by Alice, called this power lightning spark. It was the same as the incarnation of Noah's phoenix, which allowed the user to obtain the authority of lightning speed that surpassed everything. Yerek usurped this authority from the angel of lightning and illusion named Ramiel, who was also the god of disobedience, so that he could turn into lightning, enter the world of lightning speed that no one could surpass, and get the motor nerves that were as light as a cat. This authority of lightning speed was also Yerek's signature ability and the core of his battle. He, who was good at strategy, would use this authority of lightning speed to create an advantage and use strategies. He also knew the operation of lightning speed like the back of his hand, and almost no one could match him. To be honest, Noah, who had just obtained the power of lightning speed, was not just a little bit behind Yerek. To be precise, it should be said that the difference in skill proficiency was not just a little bit. Since you know the enemy's whereabouts in advance, then setting up a trap there first is a sign of respect for the enemy. If you don't have this level of awareness, then why make enemies? Yerek said in an extremely calm and emotionless tone. He didn't seem to care at all. Besides, you're not the kind of person who can't deal with someone without using everything you can, right? Very realistic as always. Guinevere smiled sweetly. You'll make the women around you suffer if you say that. This man's vulgarity is not something that happened in a day or two, Lord Guinevere, Alice said sarcastically as if nothing had happened. So it's a luxury to expect him to behave like a gentleman. That's right. Guinevere smiled. That's true. Shut up. Yerek's calmness disappeared without a trace in an instant, and his tone became a little rough. Don't use the social skills that you used to deal with women on me. Hearing that, Alice and Guinevere both laughed. The man and the two women were chatting like old acquaintances, or even best friends. It seemed that they had a good relationship, but in fact they were not. The Sage Council, which Alice once led, was hostile to the royal factory, which was led by Yerek. And Guinevere was the common enemy of Alice and Yerek. In other words, the relationship between the man and the two women here was definitely not as good as it seemed on the surface. They were real enemies of each other. So Lord Guinevere, you're here for the new king, right? Alice deliberately changed the topic and looked at Guinevere with a faint smile. I don't know if the seventh god slayer can satisfy you. The smile on Guinevere's face froze for a moment, and then she fell into silence. That was natural. She was the goddess of the earth in her previous life, and she was the god ancestor in this life. In addition, Guinevere had been secretly carrying out the plan, so the former goddess was undoubtedly the enemy of all the god slayers, and she also treated all the god slayers as enemies. Now, not only was the seventh king born, but she also had that level of power as soon as she was born. Guinevere was probably feeling threatened, right? A human who can kill a god will become a god slayer, but it is not so easy to kill a god. In the past, there was even a situation where 2 or 3 centuries passed without a single god slayer being born. Of course, There are also situations where multiple god slayers exist at the same time. Guinevere's expression became cold and indifferent. Now that there are 7 kings who can kill a god in this era, it is the end of the world, so that Lord absolutely must be resurrected. Because only he is the nemesis of the god slayers. Only he is the one who can end the fate of all the god slayers. Leaving these words, Guinevere's body turned into a burst of darkness and disappeared on the spot. Looking at where Guinevere disappeared, Alice shrugged and looked at Yarek. That's what he said. What do you think, Alexander? What do you think, Alexander? Yarek glanced at Alice, and then his whole body flashed with electric light, and he swept into the sky, disappearing into the sky in an instant with a speed that was absolutely comparable to real thunder and lightning. Seeing this, Alice smiled happily. That man also feels pressure? As she said this, Alice cast her gaze at the giant pit that was thousands of meters wide, and the smile on her face disappeared, leaving only endless bitterness. But if possible, I really hope that he can think about us who are dealing with the aftermath. Chapter 488. The next day, in the entire Italy, whether it was the news or the headlines of the newspapers, there was only one piece of news. That was yesterday, a meteorite fell in the center of Rome, the capital of Italy, turning the ground within a range of more than 1,000 meters into a huge crater. In this huge pit, there was basically nothing that originally existed in this place that was lucky enough to survive. Buildings, asphalt roads, cars, and many other facilities were directly turned into dust and debris under the direct impact of the meteorite. Now, only some sporadic traces could be found in the huge crater. It was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to find something intact, except for the exposed rock formations on the ground. At that time, if the residents there were still living as before, it would definitely cause the largest catastrophic casualties in history. Fortunately, when the meteorite fell, the astronomical experts discovered the clues in advance and evacuated the people there. So this great disaster did not cause any substantial casualties to the Italian population. However, in order to restore everything in the huge pit to its original state, to the point where people could live again, it was impossible to do so without using years as a unit of measurement. In a restaurant near the so-called meteorite crater, Noah fell into a state of speechlessness as he watched the news that was constantly repeated on the TV in the restaurant. Although fortunately, there were no casualties, it is said that this disaster caused a loss of more than 15 billion euros. Erica, who was standing behind Noah, was also watching the TV, but she seemed to be talking to herself as if nothing had happened. This number is only a temporary statistic. As the relevant work proceeds, it should continue to increase. On the side, although Liliana didn't say anything, a trace of grief appeared on her face more or less, as if she was heartbroken about the losses caused by such a disaster. Of course, Liliana wasn't heartbroken about the huge loss, but her upright character made her blame herself. The factor that caused this huge disaster was right next to me, but I couldn't stop it. Can I still be considered a knight? Listening to the intentional or unintentional sarcasm of Erica and Liliana, the corners of Noah's eyes twitched, and he felt somewhat unnatural. Noah knew that once he fought with Tony, it would definitely lead to some losses, but he originally thought that it would at most be the loss of some buildings. Who knew that it would cause such a huge loss comparable to a meteorite hitting a city directly, although it was also because it was Noah's first time using the 10 incarnations, so he couldn't control his authority very well. It should be noted that in the duel with Tony, Noah only used the power of 3 incarnations. What's more, the Phoenix incarnation only brought Noah speed that surpassed everything, but it didn't have any destructive power. In other words, Noah only used 2 incarnations to cause this disaster. It was that exaggerated. However, it couldn't be helped. After all, whether it was storm or giant, in terms of destructive power, Noah's 10 incarnations were definitely among the best. After combining the power of Noah, Welslana, and Mekker, the power of the 10 incarnations was much stronger than Welslana's 10 incarnations. There was really no way to cause this situation. while Noah was comforting himself with the excuse of having no choice. The other culprit who indirectly caused all of this was humming a song while drinking wine and eating meat in big mouthfuls. He was having a great time. Watching Tony, one of the culprits, still doing whatever he wanted while the TV in the restaurant was still broadcasting the news about the meteorite disaster. Erica was speechless at once while Liliana looked like she had given up on herself. Because they had been with Noah for a while, Erica and Liliana both knew that Noah was different from other god slayers. They more or less had some common sense, so Noah would still listen to what they said. However, even if Doni destroyed the whole of Italy, this idiot would still be singing and living a carefree life, not to mention a meteorite-level disaster, right? In this case, what's the use of saying more? Even Noah narrowed his eyes like a dead fish and sighed helplessly. Why didn't my punch kill you at that time? Noah's punch directly broke Tony's steel barrier. To be honest, if Tony had taken the full blow with his flesh and blood, even if the bones of a god slayer were comparable to the hardest metal in the world, he would still be dead. The problem was that Tony didn't take the full brunt of the punch. No. Didn't I say that I almost thought I was going to die at that time? Tony said in a relaxed tone that was not at all like he had just encountered a life-threatening situation yesterday. If I hadn't used my power of desperation when you punched me, I would definitely be dead now. Tony had killed 4 gods in total, so he possessed 4 powers. During the battle, Tony had mentioned that apart from the rending silver hand and the steel barrier, one of his other 2 authority was completely useless in battle, and the other was only used when he had to put his life on the line. Yesterday, Tony had used his power of desperation when Noah punched him. After that, the sage parliament called this power of berserk god. It was the power of desperation that Tony had usurped from Dionysus, the god of wine in ancient Greek mythology, and power of desperation that can strengthen or activate all mystical powers and make them go berserk. Noah could not help but murmur. Because when you use it, it will affect you as the user, making you unable to control your own power of desperation. That's why you said you would only use it when you need to put your life on the line, right? That's right. Tony said heroically as he chewed on a piece of meat. Although my silver hand and steel barrier are very powerful, sometimes there will be a troublesome god of disobedience that even these 2 powers cannot handle. Usually, I would use this power of desperation to make everyone within a certain range unable to use their mystical powers. They could only fight me with their swords. This is also my last chance of victory, so I can only use it when I need to put my life on the line. When Noah's fatal punch was about to hit Tony used this authority to make Noah's giant incarnation enter a state of uncontrollable state. Thus, when the giant form went out of control, Tony had relied on the steel barrier to withstand the blow. However, he was still knocked into the ground by the power of the giant form that had gone out of control. Tony, who had almost lost his life underground, once again used the steel barrier. This power of desperation was the power of desperation that Tony had stolen from the Norse hero Siegfried. In addition to being able to turn Tony's body into steel, both the weight and hardness of his body would be increased by leaps and bounds. The steel body also allowed Tony to not be suffocated or afraid of low temperatures and enter a state of suspended animation. Tony, who had entered a state of suspended animation, managed to survive the crisis and only woke up this morning. He was full of energy again. But you really are a scary guy. Even when your power of desperation is out of control, you were still able to break my steel barrier and make the ground look like that. Tony said heartlessly. Undoubtedly, that power of desperation has many problems, but you were able to find a way to solve them in an instant and catch me off guard. You're really something. Once Noah's phoenix form was used, it had the weakness of not being able to attack accurately. But in such a situation, Noah came up with a solution on the spot. First, use the power of desperation, and then dispel the power of desperation when it was time to attack. This way, not only could he perfectly unleash his power of desperation, he could also use his power of desperation to attack. Undoubtedly, you have only defeated 2 gods. How can you have three powers? Tony asked doubtfully. Tornado, power of desperation and divine strength. How did you do it? Chapter 489. As long as one was in the magic world, they had already received the information that Noah had killed Welslana and Mekhl, and had become the seventh god-slayer. However, no one knew what kind of authority Noah had obtained after killing these two gods. But there was no doubt that Noah had killed two gods, so he should have obtained two authorities. This level of speculation was still very easy to come by. After all, for a long time, every god-slayer could only usurp one of the powers of the disobedient god after killing it. Noah had killed two gods of disobedience at the same time, which meant that he had usurped two authorities. This matter had long been confirmed in everyone's mind. However, when dealing with Tony, Noah had used three abilities. He had summoned a tornado that was comparable to a natural disaster. He had obtained a speed that surpassed everything. The power was enough to split the mountains and rivers. Three abilities. That's three authorities, right? Tony was more and more confused. Why do you have three authorities? ? Hearing this, Noah was about to answer, but Erica, who knew Welslana better than the idiot Tony, muttered to herself for a moment, and then spoke out her guess first. The demon king of North America, John Pluto Smith, defeated the god of disobedience, named Skatlibica, and usurped the authority called super transformation. That's the authority that allows one to transform into various forms and exercise the ability that can only be used in that form. Liliana seemed to have the same guess as Erica. And the undefeated god of war Welslana of ancient Persia also had the power to use 10 avatars and 10 abilities. To be able to use more than 3 abilities, the king should have usurped the authority similar to the demon king of North America, right? The authority that summoned the tornado should be the power of the god King Mekhl. After all, the god king was the god of the sky who controlled the storm. Although Welslana had the avatar of the strong wind, he was not that strong and could not control the sky. But the king controlled the sky that day. Erica said, as for the authority of the super speed, it should be the power of Welslana's phoenix avatar and the bull avatar. Am I right? I've heard about the authority of the guy who lived in North America, but I never understood it. Tony scratched his head that could not store much energy and asked, is it possible to get so many abilities from a god? It is possible, but it also means that there will be a lot of strict restrictions. Liliana answered Tony's question honestly. I heard that when the demon king of North America uses the super transformation, not only does he need to offer a designated sacrifice for each avatar before he can use it, but after every avatar is used, he can't use it again for 7 days. If the king also usurped a similar authority from Welslana, then there will be various restrictions when and after using it, right? Erica smiled brilliantly, as if she had great confidence in her statement. Although I don't know if the king has all 10 avatars of Welslana, the more avatars there are, the more restrictions there are. For example, the avatars can only be used under certain circumstances. After using them, they can't be used for a period of time. There might even be side effects. Oh, I see. You can do that? Tony was enlightened. Immediately after, he looked at Noah with excitement in his eyes. In other words, you have other avatars' powers that you haven't used yet? Seeing how Tony, Erica, and Liliana summarized his authority in such a short time, Noah was stunned and did not know whether to laugh or cry. Should he say that he was too smart for his own good? Never in their wildest dreams would the three of them have thought that Noah possessed not 2, but 1 authority. However, that was a foul authority that was born after fusing with Noah's own power. Whether in terms of power or practicality, it was comparable to 10 authorities. Of course, the three of them would never have thought that because of Noah's domineering physique, all the powers of Welslana and Mekhl were absorbed by him, eliminating all restrictions. Now, instead of saying that Noah was using his authority as a god-slayer, it was better to say that he was using his authority like a god of disobedience. After all, if these powers were his, of course, there would not be so many restrictions. Wasn't Velislana also able to use 10 avatars at will? Noah was in a similar situation. Well, that was good too. Since Doni, Erica, and Liliana all thought that Noah's authority was like that, Noah did not have to explain too much. Moreover, this was no obstacle to answering Doni's question. You're right. I still have many avatars that I haven't used yet. Noah admitted readily. I do have 10 avatars, and at least half of them have not been used yet. This sentence first made Erica and Liliana look at Noah differently. More than half of his avatars had not been used yet? More than half of his avatars had not been used yet, and he had defeated the King of Swords of Italy, who had even used his authority? If he were to use the rest of his avatars, how strong would the 7th God Slayer be? This person had just become a God Slayer less than 3 days ago. Doni's eyes flashed with the joy of a war-crazed warrior. Very well, then let's fight again. Let me see all of your avatars. As soon as this was said, the first one to react was not Noah, but Liliana. Please stop fooling around, Ching. Liliana shouted loudly, pointing at the TV as if she had lost control of her emotions. Look at what you've done. Why are you still fighting? Everyone in the cafeteria was stunned by Liliana's sudden shout. They looked at her with a strange expression on their faces. Lily, Erica said as if she had a headache. I know you're a righteous girl, but you don't care about anything when you're agitated. If possible, I really hope you can change a little. Only then did Liliana react. Her pretty face was flushed red, and she quickly bowed and apologized to the people around her. Only then did she get rid of the strange gazes of the people around her. Salbalei Ching. Perhaps it was because she was too ashamed and angry. The way Liliana looked at Tony had become unscrupulous and had a murderous aura. If you continue to mess around, I'll inform Andre and ask him to take you back. Ugh. Doni was speechless. Forget it, we've already fought once anyway. It's better to leave the outcome of this battle to the next one. Anyway, my best friend is my lifelong opponent. I've already realized this kind of thing. If we're in a hurry to decide the outcome, it will make our lives boring in the future. After saying that, Doni's expression suddenly became cheerful, and he said to Noah, "Oh right. What do you plan to do next? If I remember correctly, you don't have anywhere to go, right? You rascal, you remember such unimportant things quite clearly." Noah's mouth twitched, and then he sighed and said snappily, "Why? Is the King of Italy going to chase me out of his territory? How can that be? If you want to stay here, you're welcome," Doni said straightforwardly. Then he rolled his eyes and chuckled. "Actually, I have something here that I've been hesitating about whether to do or not. Since you're free, why don't you join me and join in the fun?" When they saw the mysterious look on Doni's face, not to mention Noah, even Erica and Liliana instinctively became vigilant. "Ching," Erica said bluntly, "don't tell me you're thinking of doing something that might lead to serious consequences again?" "Ching," Liliana also said righteously, "if you're planning to do something again, I'll bet everything about Liliana Kranikar that I'll stop you." Well, don't be nervous," Doni said with a smile. "I won't do anything." However, looking at Tony's smiling face, Noah, Erica, and Liliana all understood what was going on. This guy was definitely plotting something. Chapter 490. On the same day, Doni, Erica, and Liliana all said that they had to return to the hotel, where almost all the heads of magic societies in Italy had gathered because of Doni's summons. The entire process from Doni's summons to Noah killing Welslana and Mekker to the battle with Doni seemed complicated. But in fact, it was only less than 10 days. In less than 10 days, Doni had been waiting in the hotel for Noah to become the God Slayer, and for Noah to come back and fight with him. And since Doni continued to stay in the hotel, the heads of the magic societies in Italy that had gathered because of Doni's summons naturally couldn't leave in a hurry. At the very least, no one had the guts to turn around and leave without the permission of the King of Swords. It was also because almost all the heads of the magic societies in Italy had gathered in the same hotel that Doni declared in a very high-profile manner that he wanted Noah to become the God Slayer to fight with him. When the news of Noah's success in slaying the god spread, the news of the birth of the seventh king spread all over Italy. If it weren't for the heads of the magic societies in Italy staying in one place, and Doni's unusually high-profile declaration that attracted everyone's attention to Noah, the news of Noah becoming the god slayer wouldn't have spread so quickly. Hence, while Paul, Andre, and the others were still at the hotel, Doni, Erica, and Liliana naturally had to return to the hotel first. On the way, Doni also forcibly brought Noah back to the hotel with him. Both Electra and Liliana were on full alert at this moment. The two girls didn't forget that Doni was planning to involve Noah in it. Italy had suffered losses of more than 15 billion euros because of Noah. If Doni, a simple-minded fool and troublemaker, was allowed to run around with the new king who had extraordinary strength, the world might really be doomed. Therefore, Erica and Liliana kept an eye on Noah almost the entire time, not giving Doni any chance to get close to Noah. Perhaps the two girls would continue like this until they returned to the hotel. Noah was speechless. Why were they all treating him like he was a troublemaker? Since Noah knew that he was too powerful, he would naturally pay attention to himself and not cause such exaggerated losses, right? Erica and Liliana simply treated Noah as a child who would be led astray by Doni. It was as though Noah would definitely mess around with Doni if they didn't keep an eye on him. How could Noah not be speechless? If it were any other time, Noah would have slipped away long ago after being watched like a prisoner. But since Erica and Liliana were watching him, Noah had no choice. After all, when he was in Sardinia, Noah relied on Liliana's spirit vision to know the true body of the god of disobedience that he had to kill. And because of Erica and Liliana's knowledge, after learning from the two girls that Welslana had the incarnation of the white horse, Noah thought of using the black tea to plunder this power and cause the final blow, allowing him to succeed in killing the god. If it weren't for Erica and Liliana, it was really unknown whether Noah could succeed in killing the god. In addition, Erica and Liliana saved Noah, who almost fell into the sea. After saving Noah's life, Noah didn't really escape and allowed the two girls to watch over him all the way back to the hotel. Kings! Kings! Greetings, kings! As soon as they returned to the hotel, the people in charge of the Italian magic associations who were still in the hotel all came out to greet Noah and Doni as if they were VIPs. Doni accepted it calmly, and Noah had no intention of correcting him. After admitting in front of Erica and Liliana that he had to deal with the god of disobedience as the god of disobedience, Noah was mentally prepared for this and naturally wouldn't correct the behavior of others who treated him like an emperor. In Noah's view, this was just a deal. If others worshipped Noah as their king, then Noah would deal with those gods when the god of disobedience caused trouble for these people. It was just a deal. And this was also the ultimate interpretation of the relationship between the god of disobedience and the related people in the magic world in this world. Not long after, Paolo and Andre walked out of the crowd. "Hey Andre." Doni greeted Andre warmly. "My friend, I'm so happy to see you so energetic." "Don't call me that. You're a moving piece of trash. You're the most annoying scum." Andre scolded Tony as soon as he stepped forward. "I knew you would cause so much trouble. That's why I needed to stop you. But you tied me up and threw me into the inner room of the toilet. You're not human. Bastard." Upon hearing this, Noah, Erica, and Liliana finally understood what ridiculous things Doni had done in order to fight Noah. But if they thought about it carefully, it made sense. Knowing that Noah had become a god of disobedience, Doni couldn't wait to fight with Noah. It was impossible that Andre didn't know how much trouble a head-on conflict between the two kings would cause, and it was impossible for him not to stop it. But in the end, Doni tied Andre up, threw him into the inner room of the toilet, and then rushed out to look for Noah. At this moment, everyone, including Noah, looked at Andre sympathetically. Being the butler of such a troublemaker in human form, Andre would probably suffer from mental weakness, dementia, and depression for the rest of his life. How pitiful. Uncle. Erica bowed to Paul. "Erica Browntree has returned safely. It's good that you're back." Paul looked at Erica with satisfaction. I've heard about your performance. If possible, I really hope you haven't heard about it, Uncle. Erica sighed. This time Erica Browntree, didn't have the chance to be active at all. As expected, even the Lord is jealous of my talent and depriving me of the opportunity to express myself? Erica was as self-righteous as ever. This is your first time facing a real God. It's amazing that you can do this. I heard that you also saved the king. That's a great contribution. Paul comforted with a wry smile and nodded to Liliana. Thank you for your hard work, Miss Liliana. No, Liliana replied seriously. It's my duty as a knight. All in all, both of you performed well. Everyone can see that, so there's no need to compare. Besides, being able to witness and even assist in the birth of the seventh king is something that others can't even dream of. After saying that, Paul turned his head and looked at Noah. He performed a noble knight's salute, which he had never done before. I, Paul Browntree, send my greetings to the seventh king. My apologies. Compared to being angry at this idiot, greeting the new king is more important. Andre's expression tensed up as he bowed to Noah. King, please forgive my negligence. You didn't neglect anything. Noah waved his hand and replied casually. Although I'm called king by you, I've only been king for less than 10 days. In the eyes of other godslayers, I'm just a novice, a rookie, and a kid. There's nothing to worry about. No, you were able to successfully kill 2 of the highest level gods at the same time before becoming a king. After becoming a king, you directly defeated the King of Swords of Italy. The king's power is evident, Paul said solemnly and immediately smiled bitterly. So, I've seen your power and understood the king's power. I beg the king to show mercy while you're still in Italy. Hearing that, Noah smiled wryly. Paul must be referring to the so-called crater, right? As the commander-in-chief of Italy's leading magic association, Noah couldn't understand the fear of seeing a person who could create such a disaster at any time running around. Even the heads of the other magic associations around looked at Noah with awe and fear. They begged Noah to let go of the territory they were in charge of, which made Noah speechless. Is it necessary? Chapter 491. Late at night. At this time, except for some night owls who specialized in moving at night, most normal people had already fallen asleep. In an extremely luxurious room, Noah, who was lying on the bed, suddenly opened his eyes. He got up, took his clothes down from an extremely luxurious hanger, put them on, and went to the window. Looking up at the bright moon hanging high in the sky, Noah's face couldn't help but soften. Even in Italy, the moon is so beautiful. Leaving these words behind, Noah walked out of the luxurious room. With the soft sound of the door closing, the entire room returned to a deathly silence. There was no longer any life in the room. At the entrance of the hotel, where all the heads of the magic associations in Italy gathered, Noah slowly walked out of it. The streets were brightly lit. Even at night, the street lamps beside the road were still working tirelessly. Some of the buildings on both sides of the road had been completely turned off, but some, like the hotel, could still be seen through some windows, illuminating the entire dark world. Looking at the few vehicles driving back and forth on the road with their headlights on, Noah took a deep breath of the cold night air, turned around, and was about to walk in another direction when a voice sounded at the entrance of the hotel. It's so late. Where are you going instead of resting in your room, Your Majesty? Erica and Liliana, who were dressed as neatly as Noah, appeared at the entrance of the hotel. Erica looked at Noah with her usual confident eyes while Liliana's expression was as solemn as a sculpture. However, both of them fixed their eyes on Noah and didn't leave him. Noah was puzzled. Why are you here? Of course we noticed that Your Majesty left the room, Erica said bluntly. Don't you know that Lily and I are living in the 2 rooms next to yours, Your Majesty? Is that so? Noah was even more puzzled. Then why are you living next to me? Your Majesty, please don't ask a question you already know the answer to. How can we not look after Sir Barrett when he wants to take you to do something stupid? Liliana sighed. We really don't want to see another disaster like the last one. Please forgive us, Your Majesty. I understand what you mean. Noah shrugged. That's why I left, isn't it? Erica and Liliana were both stunned and shocked. Left? Erica said in surprise. Your Majesty, are you leaving this place? Hearing Erica's question, Noah asked in return. Is there a reason why I have to stay here? Erica was speechless. Although I don't know what that idiot is planning, with his brain capacity, he's probably planning something stupid that ordinary people can't come up with, right? Noah curled his lips. The last duel was because that idiot helped me slay a god, so I accompanied him. But this time, I don't want to continue accompanying him. Besides, Italy is also that idiot's territory, so it's normal for me to leave, right? Tony seemed to be planning to involve Noah in his plan. As for that idiot, not only would he not be discouraged if Noah beat him up, he would also be more than happy to draw his sword and fight with Noah. If Noah scolded him, with that idiot's personality, he would definitely do his own thing, and would not listen to others' advice. In that case, Noah might as well leave. In that case, no matter what that idiot planned to do, it would have nothing to do with Noah, and he wouldn't be involved in it. But Liliana couldn't help but step forward and ask hurriedly, Where do you plan to go? Upon hearing her words, Noah twitched his brows. Why? Do you intend to continue monitoring me? This time, even Liliana was at a loss for words. How could Erica and Liliana's little tricks hide from Noah? Even though they said that they were staying next to Noah's room, to prevent him from getting involved in that idiot Tony's stupid plan. This also meant a certain degree of monitoring, right? After all, Noah had a tremendous power that could cause catastrophic losses, even if he casually cast a spell. No one could feel at ease letting such a dangerous person wander around. It was due to this that Andre was around Tony, who also belonged to the category of dangerous people. Andre also had the role of monitoring Tony and preventing him from doing anything stupid that would lead to huge losses. It's not that I can't understand your concerns. I'm sure you will still be worried no matter what promises I make. But to be honest, if you treat me like a prisoner, you will only piss me off. That's not good, right? Noah crossed his arms and looked at Erica and Liliana. I don't want to be monitored everywhere. If you continue to be so unscrupulous, even though you are my saviors, I will consider learning from Tony and learning from him. I will tie you up and throw you into the toilet before leaving. The corners of Erica's and Liliana's eyes twitched at the same time, and strong resistance surged on their faces. Not to mention Erica, who had great confidence in herself and always emphasized glamour. Even Liliana, who had always adhered to her knighthood, would probably pass out because of the excessive humiliation if she was tied up and thrown into the toilet. Wouldn't she? As for resisting, it wasn't a matter of whether they wanted it or not, but whether they could. Not to mention how terrifying the authority of the seventh king of the God Slayer in front of him was, even before he became a God Slayer. In terms of swordsmanship alone, this man blocked the magic sword of Italy's King of Swords and easily defeated Liliana. Therefore, if Electra and Liliana resisted, Noah could have easily taken care of the two famous prodigies without using his authority. Couldn't he? Kaching seemed to have said that you don't have anywhere to go, right? Erica changed the topic. Although I don't know what's going on, you just left like this. Do you have anywhere to go? It's true that I don't have anywhere to go, but that doesn't mean that I don't have anywhere to go. Noah shook his head and looked up at the sky again. Even without that idiot Tony, I would still leave this place. Why? Liliana asked subconsciously. Noah smiled calmly and said, Because I have something that I have to find. Noah had two purposes for coming to this world. The first purpose was to find a way to increase his strength, to at least increase Noah's own strength to the point where he could defeat Hades and protect his companions and family. Noah had already completed this purpose. After killing the undefeated god of victory and the king of gods in the Mediterranean Sea, he absorbed all the power of Welslana and Mekhl and fused it with his own power, giving birth to the authority of the 10 incarnations and becoming the God Slayer. Now compared to before, Noah's strength could be described as earth-shattering. It was no longer the same. With his current strength, it wouldn't even take much effort to deal with Hades. Therefore, Noah could focus on completing the second purpose. Find the world fragment. No matter what the reason is, there's no need for me to continue to stay here. Noah spread his hands. So let's part ways here. After that, Noah turned around, waved his hand at Erica and Liliana, and walked to the other side of the hotel. It's not bad to have someone to send me off before I leave. Looking at Noah's back gradually walking away, Erica and Liliana opened their mouths at the same time as if they wanted to say something. But in the end, they chose to give up. They stared blankly in the direction where Noah left, and did not speak for a long time. After leaving the hotel, Noah walked along the sidewalk that was still crowded even at night, and walked forward aimlessly. Although I'm looking for the world fragment, the world hasn't given me any clues about the whereabouts of the world fragment. Where should I go to look for it? As he walked forward, Noah, who was thinking about this question, suddenly frowned after a while. He suddenly raised his head and looked ahead. On the opposite side of the street, a young girl slowly walked over. The moment he saw the girl, Noah's body suddenly straightened up without any reason, and his limbs were suddenly filled with strength. His body automatically entered a state of battle. Chapter 492. On the street where one or two people would pass by every once in a while, Noah's gaze met with the girl walking towards him, causing the surrounding atmosphere to become heavy all of a sudden. The girl suddenly stopped and stared at Noah's face. She was a very beautiful girl. She looked to be about 13 or 14 years old, and her height was only half of Noah's. She was a standard girl that people would think of as a child. However, such a girl not only had an angelic face, but also had a kind of beauty that ordinary people could not understand. It turned into a temperament that rippled around the girl's body, making the girl extremely eye-catching no matter how one looked at her. However, the passers-by who should have been distracted by the girl's beautiful figure didn't seem to be able to see her. Or rather, they didn't seem to be able to sense her existence. Even when they brushed past her, they continued to walk on their own, their footsteps not pausing for even a moment. It seemed that only Noah was able to discover the girl's existence. Thus, Noah saw the girl's appearance clearly. For example, the silver hair that was not too long or short, as if it had melted into the moonlight. Also, the pair of snake eyes that were as deep as the night, darker than Noah's eyes. That's right. It was the snake eyes. From the girl's eyes, Noah clearly saw that for a moment, the other party's eyes were like the eyes of a snake, and a flash of light in the night like the eyes of an owl. Looking at this incredibly beautiful girl, feeling that his body had entered a state of readiness for battle in an instant, filled with power, and entered a better state than when a human was stimulated by adrenaline, Noah could not help but smile bitterly. Sure enough, I can't stay idle. Why did his body suddenly have such a change? Because Noah met an old enemy. He met the enemy of every god slayer. God. To be more precise, it should be called the god of disobedience. The god of disobedience, that appeared on the ground, stared at Noah with eyes that seemed to condense the entire night. After a while, a very clear but emotionless voice sounded from her body. To be able to meet an enemy in such a place, this can be considered a karma between you and me, right? God Slayer and God of Disobedience. These two existences that surpassed human beings, and were enemies of each other originally, had an inseparable karma. At least after becoming a God Slayer, no matter where Noah went, as long as he was still in this world, then he would be like a flower that attracted bees and butterflies, in a strange way that would make others feel inconceivable, wandering on the ground of this world, and meet the God that appeared on the ground of this world. This was fate. Therefore, the girl used the term karma. This concubine has indeed heard that there is an enemy in this land who possesses a demonic sword that can cut through everything. The girl stared at Noah intently, her voice lacking the basic uplift, and without the slightest emotion. However, although you also have the aura of a sword, it is not as sharp, and it is mixed with the aura of other forces. And there is even an aura that I hate very much in it. You should not be the king of this world, right? What difference does it make whether I am or not? Noah met the girl's gaze and suddenly smiled. For me, your identity as the god of disobedience is enough. And for you, no matter where I am the god slayer, I am your enemy. You and I can't let each other have a good time. As long as you know this, is there a need to know anything else? Well said, arrogant people on the ground who see the gods as prey. Between you and me, it is enough to be able to recognize the enemy on the battlefield. And the rest is not important at all. The girl raised her chin. Her face was still expressionless, but her pair of dark eyes showed a touch of arrogance and joy. As a goddess in charge of war, I also have a warrior's part in my body. If I can compete with my enemy, even I will feel a little excited. As she said this, the girl's silver hair, which was as soft as moonlight, began to move without wind, and her petite body began to emit traces of fog-like darkness, which actually made the surrounding lights slightly dim. Then play with me, God Slayer. The pitch-black fog that emerged from the girl's body not only had the aura of darkness, but also a power that made Noah's hair stand on end. It was like a poisonous gas, giving Noah a feeling that he would die if he touched it, as if it represented death itself. This girl was definitely not as simple as she looked on the surface. No, it should be said that from the surface, it was absolutely impossible to understand what kind of power this girl had that made people's hair stand on end. However, there was no doubt that this girl's oppressive power, or divine power, was no weaker than Welslana and Mekhl, who Noah had killed before. In other words, in terms of level, this girl in front of him was also a god of the highest level. However, for some reason, Noah's sensing ability seemed to capture something strange in the girl's aura. It was like a cake with a piece missing, which was out of place and very incomplete. Have you noticed this concubine's flaw? The girl's dark eyes flashed, as if she had seen through something, and cast her gaze on Noah. To be able to sense that I lack a snake, God Slayer. You are not simple, but even if I am not complete now, I still have the power to compete with my enemy. Not complete. I see. This goddess who came from nowhere did not seem to be in a complete state. So she gave Noah a feeling of incompatibility? In other words, even if this goddess in front of him was a god of the highest level, before she recovered her complete state, her power would definitely not be as strong as Welslana and Mekhl at full power, right? With this thought in mind, Noah immediately relaxed a lot. He looked around, and found that there were still pedestrians around them. When he saw that they were approaching, he looked at the girl. It's not easy to fight here, let's change a place. There's no need for that. The young girl frowned and looked around. If you feel that the surrounding humans are too much of a hindrance, then let me use my death word spirit to eliminate them all. After saying this, the dark fog on the girl's body suddenly rose and spread to the surroundings. Seeing this, Noah narrowed his eyes and smiled indifferently. I'm sorry, although I don't know what you are planning to do. I said to change a place, so I have to change a place. I don't mean to ask for your permission. As he said this, in the depths of Noah's heart, the outline of the stone plate connected to the 10 avatars suddenly turned and pointed to the image of a phoenix spreading its wings. Fear those with wings. Evil people and strong people, all fear me with wings. My wings will bring you a curse, and evil people will not be able to hit me. As if it came from the distant horizon, the voice turned into an echo, echoing under the night sky. Then, the girl only saw Noah's figure suddenly disappear, and in the next moment, a hand quickly enlarged in front of her eyes. The girl's dark pupils abruptly shrank for no reason. However, it was already too late for him to react. In the girl's eyes, the hand that enlarged in front of her suddenly grabbed her throat and lifted her up. Shortly after, the girl heard the sharp sound of the wind blowing past her ears. That was the sound of Noah, who had entered the state of lightning speed, directly lifting the girl up and leaping up. Like a phantom, his body turned into a flash of light and flew towards the sky. When Noah used the Phoenix avatar, not only could he obtain a speed that surpassed everything, his body would also become abnormally light, and his agility and jumping ability would be greatly improved. If there was someone at the scene then, he would be able to see that Noah, who had turned into a phantom, flashed past like a stream of light, and grabbed the girl's neck. Then he soared into the sky, like a meteor streaking across the sky, and fell in another direction. It was only 2 or 3 seconds. In the next moment, the girl felt the hand that was choking her neck fiercely throw her to the ground. Bang! A muffled sound resounded through the sky. Chapter 493. Whoosh! With a sharp piercing sound, a petite figure shot down from the sky like an arrow leaving the bow, smashing directly into the ground without any reduction in momentum. Bang! In the muffled sound, the petite girl smashed into the ground, stirring up a burst of thick smoke and scattered gravel, causing the falling gravel to make a burst of pa-pa-pa sound. Bang! However, in the next moment, the smoke and dust that filled the air from the ground was blown away by a burst of dark wind like an explosion, revealing the situation inside. The girl, whose whole body was fluctuating with a deep mist-like darkness, stood in the middle of the dark wind without the slightest injury, but her eyes were slightly hazy as she looked forward. Noah, who had appeared in front of the girl out of nowhere, looked around as if there was no one around, and nodded in satisfaction. I thought I wouldn't have a chance to come here again, but I didn't expect that I would use this place as a battlefield for the second time. However, it seems that this place is really suitable. Only then did the young lady react as she surveyed her surroundings. Soon after, she discovered that she was in a terrifyingly huge pit. The giant pit was quite wide, at least more than a kilometer in size. The inside of the giant pit was filled with scattered debris and gravel of various buildings. The ground was slowly cracking like a spider web, as if something was about to drill out from the ground, which made one's hair stand on end. Impressively, it was the giant pit caused by the battle between Noah and Tony. No one will come here again. Even if there is, no one will come to this barren place at night. Noah looked straight at the girl and shrugged. Don't you think it's good to use this place as a battlefield? The girl did not answer Noah's teasing words, but stared at Noah for a while and suddenly said, "Some time ago, I felt that there was an unusually strong curse power in this place. I was originally looking for a snake, but I became interested. With the idea that it's not bad to go a little further, I came here." That was why Noah had coincidentally met the god of disobedience in Rome, Italy, who had blended into the crowd. Now that I think about it, the only ones who could create this place, other than us gods, are you god slayers. The girl's eyes flashed. King of god slayers, is this temporary battlefield created by your power? Like I said, that kind of thing is not important at all. Noah slowly withdrew his sloppy expression and said calmly, "I'm sorry, although I have no enmity with you, since you've become a god slayer, and judging from your behavior just now, you don't seem to care about the lives of humans. In order to prevent you from causing unnecessary trouble, I'll have to ask you to leave." A strong curse power burst out from Noah's body, like a burning flame, rising from Noah's body, causing Noah's coat and clothes to flutter without any wind. After all, the people here serve me as their king. As a deal, I've already decided to take care of you, god of disobedience, for them. Seeing Noah's body constantly fluctuating with curse power, the girl finally smiled. Her smile was unusually happy. She looked exactly like Tony. The girl was also happy for the upcoming fierce battle. Amazing power. Only with such power can you be qualified to be a god's enemy and have the ability to wield your sword and kill us gods, the girl said with joy from the bottom of her heart. However, Godslayer, there's one thing you're wrong about. It's not that we have no enmity. You're the king of god slayers and I'm a god. We're enemies, don't forget this. Thank you for reminding me. Noah's eyes gradually narrowed. Then let's begin. The moment the words fell, the atmosphere in the huge pit suddenly exploded like a volcanic eruption. Just when Noah was about to make his move, the girl's face suddenly stiffened. She suddenly turned her head and looked at the other side of the night sky. This feeling, seeing the girl suddenly turn her head and look in another direction, the oppressive aura on her body suddenly stagnated and showed signs of decreasing. Noah frowned. What are you doing? The girl ignored Noah and just stared blankly at the other side of the night sky. After a while, she turned her head and looked at Noah. The mist-like darkness on her body shrank back into her body. What's your name? Didn't I say that it's not important? Noah's brows furrowed even tighter. If you want to know before you're willing to fight, then it's fine to tell you. My name is Noah Doria. Noah Doria. The girl repeated the name a few times, as if she wanted to remember it. Then she nodded. Let's leave this battle for later. Noah was stunned. Although running away from the battlefield is beneath the dignity of a goddess, I am the goddess of war. Running away and retreating is also an important part of war. Regrouping is definitely not something to be laughed at, the girl said with an emotionless voice. Moreover, I have to admit that at this time, even if I fight you, I will most likely lose before I retrieve the snake. That is a loss of composure that I cannot allow. So let's wait for me to recover my complete Trinity form before we fight again. After saying that, the girl's petite body was gradually covered by a layer of darkness that emerged from the ground. Only a pair of dark eyes stared straight at Noah, rippling with dense darkness. Finally, let me tell you my name. I am Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war who appeared here in order to retrieve the snake that was lost in ancient times. I am also the queen of the gods who had obtained everything in the past and lost everything in the end. Noah Doria, don't forget the name of your enemy. Wait here for the arrival of Athena the disobedient. After leaving these words, the girl who called herself Athena was finally covered by the thick darkness and completely disappeared. Noah could only look in the direction where Athena disappeared in astonishment, his expression becoming extremely interesting. Athena? Athena, one of the most famous Olympian deities in Greek mythology? The goddess of wisdom and war? Like Pandora, Athena was the most famous goddess that everyone was familiar with. It would not be an exaggeration to say that she was the most famous goddess. Although this goddess who called herself Athena appeared in the form of a small dot like Pandora, the aura of the highest god on her body made Noah believe that this was the case. Moreover, for a god, their name was equivalent to a part of their power. This was because the essence of a god came from mythology, and the most basic factor that formed a myth was naturally their name. Therefore, as long as a god was a god, they would either not report their name, or once they reported their name, they would never report the wrong name. This was certain, but if the other party was really Athena, then it would be troublesome. One must know that Athena was not only the most famous goddess of wisdom in Greek mythology, but also the goddess of war who ruled over war. Her father was the king of the gods in Greek mythology, Zeus. Her mother was the primitive goddess of wisdom, Métis. No matter which one, they were extremely famous gods. Do I have to meet such a famous god every time? Noah's frown deepened. Moreover, she said that she was the queen of the gods who had obtained everything and lost everything in the past. She also said that she was incomplete and had lost the snake. What is this snake? Also, what is the form of the Trinity? The more Noah thought about it, the more puzzled he became. It could not be helped. Although Athena was super famous, she was only famous in name. As for the core of the myth that formed Athena, if one did not really study it, it would be impossible for most people to know about it. With this thought in mind, Noah closed his eyes slightly and fully activated his sensory ability, bringing everything around him into his control. The entire range of his sensory ability was clearly reflected in Noah's mind, giving Noah pieces of information and information. Not long after, Noah felt a trace of aura. He opened his eyes and used the phoenix incarnation. His body was like a phantom, like a mirage, and disappeared. Chapter 494. When the sky was bright again, Noah had re-entered the city and came to a restaurant. This was a small restaurant that was not very luxuriously decorated. It was a small restaurant that belonged to the general public. It was not very high-end. Even ordinary civilians could order food here without any scruples. Now, the sun had just risen, and there were only a few customers in the restaurant. They seemed to be office workers who were rushing to work and were eating breakfast here. However, these people were not in a hurry. They were all wearing casual clothes and eating breakfast with a leisurely look. At this time, These people were eating breakfast leisurely, while watching a TV placed in the restaurant. The TV was broadcasting the news. Moreover, it was the same as yesterday. The news reported that a meteorite had hit the Italian capital Rome, causing a huge crater and a huge loss of more than 15 billion euros. Noah helplessly looked at the news that had been reported countless times. He immediately walked into the restaurant, found a seat and sat down. The waitress who came out to greet him was a 17 or 18-year-old girl. If Noah did not understand Italian, he might be troubled at this time. Unfortunately, Noah was very proficient in the languages of the world. Not to mention speaking, even writing was not a problem. Moreover, after becoming a god slayer, Noah also gained a very special ability. It was a special ability that all god slayers had. It was called 1,000 languages, and it allowed people to learn the secrets of magic in any language in just a few days. It was a secret technique that could only be learned by magic experts who had studied magic for many years and had comprehended the profound meaning of the spirit of language. Once one became a god slayer, this secret technique of 1,000 words would be engraved into the body of the god slayer instinctively. Others may spend a lifetime to understand magic, but once a god slayer succeeds in killing a god and reincarnates, they can automatically learn magic. This made Noah wonder how many times he cheated. However, thanks to this ability, at least in the future, Noah did not have to worry about language problems, even if he went to a world that was not set in modern times. As such, to Noah, the problem of language did not exist anymore. So, Noah quickly ordered a cup of coffee to wake up his slightly tired mind because he didn't sleep all night. He looked at the menu and ordered spaghetti and a sandwich. The spaghetti and sandwiches were freshly made, and so was the coffee. It was said that pouring a large amount of sugar into the coffee was the way Italians drank coffee. It was said that the taste of coffee would be very strong, sweet, and fragrant. Back in Sardinia, Erica had said more than once that it had to be drunk this way to taste good. However, Noah preferred to drink black coffee without any sugar. Noah didn't like things that were too sweet. Instead, he had a special liking for salty flavors. In addition, the refreshing effect of black coffee was even more obvious. Therefore, when he drank coffee, Noah drank black coffee directly. In the beginning, he had tasted a lot of bitterness, but after getting used to it, Noah felt that compared to the sweet coffee, the black coffee tasted better. In fact, this was also because of Qingzi's influence. In the world of Night of the Magicians, when they were still living in the manor house, although Yuzhu would make black tea for them every day, and Qingzi also liked to drink black tea very much. Whenever there was an important magician job that needed to be done, Qingzi would drink black coffee. During that time, Noah was still learning rune magic in Yuzhu's manor house. Qingzi, who had to check the barrier at night, said that Yuzhu didn't like to drink black coffee, so she forced Noah to drink black coffee with her. It was during that time that Noah gradually got used to the taste of black coffee. He was poisoned by Qingzi. By the way, Qingzi herself didn't like to drink black coffee. She only drank black coffee to work more efficiently at night. She forced Noah to drink with her, most likely because Qingzi wanted to mess with Noah. In the end, Qingzi didn't expect that in the end, Noah actually got used to the black coffee and even drank it with relish. Yuzhu, who happened to see this scene, was surprised that Noah was much more mature than Qingzi, which made Qingzi's face as dark as the bottom of a pot. However, men who knew how to drink black coffee were more mature and steady men, and Qingzi admitted this point honestly. Of course, Qingzi wasn't the kind of person who would give up easily. Qingzi, who couldn't use black coffee to mess with Noah, somehow found out that Noah didn't like to eat sweet things. After that, she bought all kinds of desserts in disguise and forced Noah to eat with her, which really made Noah work hard for a period of time. After that, one day, Noah heard a scream from Qingzi's room that resounded throughout the manor house. After that, Noah found out that because Qingzi had been eating all kinds of desserts in disguise, she seemed to have gained a lot of weight because of the excessive calorie intake. Therefore, people like Qingzi were the type of people who harmed others would eventually harm themselves. Noah couldn't help but chuckle at the thought of the past. He finished the black coffee in his hand, and after ordering another cup, he began to ponder while munching on his sandwich. Following Athena's scent, Noah came to this place. However, he didn't know if it was because the sun had risen, but the dark scent on Athena's body that he had been able to sense suddenly disappeared, which made Noah unable to continue tracking her. However, Noah was certain that Athena was in this city. There was no mistake about it. If he wanted to find Athena, it would be a real game of hide and seek. At least I know that the goddess is nearby. That's good enough, Noah muttered to himself. Moreover, since she's the god of disobedience, she will cause trouble sooner or later. I'm not afraid that I can't find Athena. I just don't know why Athena suddenly left last night. Athena was the goddess of wisdom and war. Excluding the aspect of wisdom, as a goddess of war, Athena was much more powerful than Ares, who was also a god of war. After becoming the god of disobedience, it was not impossible for her to sink into the fanaticism of battle and war. She would definitely not give up on battle suddenly, unless Athena had discovered something important. Maybe it's the snake that the goddess has been looking for? Noah finished the sandwich in his hand and ate the spaghetti. Although I don't know what's going on, I can confirm that Athena is incomplete. Unless I find that so-called snake. Even if Athena is the highest god, it shouldn't be difficult to defeat her. If this sentence was heard by others, they would probably laugh bitterly. For humans, there was no way to defeat a god. Even the weakest god could only be sealed and not killed. As the highest goddess, even if Athena lost a part of her power, she still couldn't be weak. Even the god slayer couldn't defeat her. Noah said that it wouldn't be difficult for Athena to defeat the god slayer, which didn't sound like a god slayer, who was born less than 10 days ago. But Noah's physique was so foul. He absorbed the power of the highest god, the god of victory, and the king of gods, and combined them with his own power to derive the power of the 10 incarnations. Noah's power leap was too exaggerated. It was not an exaggeration to say that he reached the heavens in a single bound. So the real foul was Noah's physique. Compared to this overbearing physique, Noah's power was nothing. At this moment, the door of the restaurant opened, and two people wearing black cloaks walked in from the outside and sat in the corner. These two people dressed so suspiciously came to the restaurant, but they didn't attract any attention at all. Only the waiter staggered over, as if he was sleepwalking, and accepted their orders with blank eyes. Noah, who noticed this scene, raised his eyebrows without batting an eyelid. Magicians. The two suspicious black cloak people were two magicians. They seemed to have used some kind of magic to make the people around them unable to notice them. They also used a hypnotic magic to control the waiter and order the food. Whether it was their disguise or their actions, it was too suspicious. If they didn't want to be noticed, they could have just changed their disguise. Was it necessary to do this? Noah, who felt very suspicious, began to pay attention to the two black-cloaked people. Chapter 495. In the presence of two very suspicious black-robed men, the office workers in the restaurant were still watching TV and eating breakfast, and they didn't realize that there were two aliens among them. The two aliens seemed to have said something to the waiter with blank eyes, and then the waiter staggered away again, probably in this state to prepare food for the two black-robed men. Then, the two black-robed men talked to each other, as if there was no one else around. The people from the headquarters should be almost here, right? If they rushed here overnight, they should be here soon. In this case, we can finally excavate the ruins. I don't know what's in the ruins, but there's a huge curse power gradually condensing in it, that's for sure. Such a huge curse power. Maybe it can lead to the appearance of the god of disobedience. If that's the case, then this time the harvest is big. With the power of the god of disobedience, we must teach those formal magic societies a lesson. Fortunately, the incident with the crater attracted the attention of the magic societies in Italy away from us. That's how we were able to successfully hide from the spies of the magic societies and excavate the ruins. I heard that it was the duel between the two kings that caused the crater. Sure enough, the god slayers are a group of monsters. Forget it. If the excavation of this ruins is successful, maybe we can borrow the power of the god of disobedience. Then even if those formal magic societies ask for help from the god slayers, we will have the power to fight. Yes, let's finish our meal quickly and go back to the ruins. After the above conversation, the two black-robed men sat there quietly, chatting about some unimportant things while waiting for the dishes to be served. After the waiter staggered and served some dishes with blank eyes, the two began to eat. On the other side, Noah, who clearly heard the conversation between the two black-robed men, pondered slightly. If I'm not mistaken, the two black-robed men in front of me should be magicians from some evil magic society, right? After all, they just said the words formal magic society, which proves that they are not a formal magic society. A person's evil thoughts were limitless, not to mention a person with power. Just like how in the world of fairy tale, there were universal magic and forbidden magic like our system, there were also some extremely taboo magic in this world. The only ones who could use this taboo magic without any scruples were those evil magic guilds, who were rejected by the orthodox magic guilds. According to the words of these two evil magicians, the society they belong to seems to have found a ruin, and it is very likely to attract the god of disobedience. Because of the duel between Noah and Tony, all the magic associations in Italy were now focusing on the shocking crater, which led to the discovery of this ruin by the evil magic associations. They planned to take advantage of this opportunity to excavate the ruin. Could it be that Athena suddenly left last night because of the appearance of this ruin? Noah's heart jolted. He raised his head and cast his gaze towards the two black-robed men. The corners of his mouth slowly curled up. After the meal, the two evil magicians dressed in black robes walked out of the restaurant and entered the street, as if there was no one around. There was a faint fluctuation of magic on their bodies. The two black-robed men used the magic of invisibility that could make ordinary people unable to detect them. They reduced their sense of existence to the lowest level, and no one would notice them. They walked on the street in a dignified manner. After a while, they turned into an alley. The next moment, the fluctuations of magic on the two black-robed men changed, and a magic circle spun under their feet. Amidst the loud stomping sounds, the two black-robed men suddenly soared into the sky like birds. Then, as if they were directly stepping on air, they leaped forward and forward in a certain direction. That is the magic of jump. For a full 10 minutes, the two black-robed men used the magic of jump to continuously jump in a certain direction. Because they didn't need to take a detour, and because they had amazing jumping ability, the speed of the two men was faster than the average car. It didn't take long for them to jump into a remote wilderness. And the two black-robed men, who jumped into this remote wilderness, abruptly disappeared without a trace. Almost at the same time, Noah, who was like a phantom, quietly appeared at the place where the two black-robed men had disappeared amidst the vibrations of space and atmosphere. He furrowed his brows slightly, closed his eyes, and activated his sensing ability. After a while, his furrowed brows relaxed. Barriers. Within the range of Noah's sensing ability, a large part of the wilderness in front of him was covered by several boundaries. Concealment barrier, repelling barrier, and blocking barrier. A total of 3 barriers, quite a big deal. The concealment barrier can isolate the inside and outside of the barrier, so that the people outside can't see anything inside the barrier, only the wilderness. The repelling barrier can give everyone within 100 meters of the barrier a hint of leave and do not approach, making it impossible for ordinary people to come close. The blocking barrier can isolate all sounds, auras, and even the fluctuations of curse power. No matter how big the changes inside, the people outside will not be able to detect it. These 3 barriers are very common types of barriers, but they are also the most commonly used type of barriers. Thus Noah, who had lived with Qingzi and Yuzhu for quite some time, and had even gone to Yuzhu's library, was able to easily identify these 3 barriers. Immediately, Noah opened his eyes and suddenly smiled. To need to set up 3 such cautious barriers, I don't believe that the so-called ruins are not here. After saying that, Noah directly walked forward. It's a pity that spells and whatnot are useless against the God Slayer. After saying that, Noah directly stepped forward and broke into the barrier. Buzz! In the next moment, the barrier that was touched by Noah suddenly shook. It was like the surface of water that was rippling, but also like boiling water. It kept fluctuating under the direct impact of the God Slayer's body, which has the ability to resist curse power. The three large barriers were disturbed without any suspense. Bang! Then in a muffled sound, the three barriers broke at the same time. Then, the scene that appeared in front of Noah completely changed. First of all, the boundless wilderness disappeared and turned into a rocky land. In the middle of the rocky land, there was a passage that led to the underground. At the end of the passage, there was a huge stone door that had been opened. In this rocky area, a large group of magicians in black robes were doing all sorts of work. Some were using magic to excavate the surrounding land. Some were transporting rocks and soil. Some were conducting research on the massive stone gate. And some were even going in and out of the gate. The appearance of Noah and the destruction of the barrier naturally made everyone present turn pale with fright. Who is it? Who am I? In front of all the magicians dressed in black robes, Noah spread his hands. What I can be sure of is that you are definitely not good people. As soon as his voice fell, the magicians present finally reacted. Kill him. Don't let him spread the news here. Attract the attention of the official magic association. It was not known who shouted, but after that, all the magicians' bodies rose with curse power and looked at Noah with murderous eyes. Seeing this, Noah raised his eyebrows, and just as he was about to do something, two sounds echoed in the air. You actually want to use a curse on the king? There should be a limit to your ignorance. Despicable person! Who allowed you to point your sword at the king? Accompanied by these two delicate shouts, two beautiful figures landed in front of Noah, like knights protecting Noah, one on the left and one on the right, protecting Noah behind them, majestically facing everyone in front of them. The newcomers, one was wearing a red and black outfit with a face full of confidence and power, while the other was wearing a blue and black outfit with a stern and serious expression. They were none other than Erica and Liliana. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.